Chapter 1761. The old man opened his mouth and smiled, revealing a row of shiny teeth. Arbor saw that the old man had a red nose and was dressed in tattered clothes. Although he looked like a beggar, his spirit and appearance were very good. She couldn't help but find it funny. She nodded and signaled everyone to pour the chrysanthemum wine into the old man's bowl. The old man was beaming with joy. He grinned foolishly at her for a while before holding the big bowl and squatting at the side to drink. Everyone shook their heads helplessly and turned to look at Arbor. Arbor opened the jade gourd, and a strong fragrance of fruit wine floated out of the gourd. The old man, who was squatting at the side and drinking the wine like it was water, suddenly twitched his nose. He got up from the ground and turned to look in Arbor's direction. There were many elderly people sitting in front of the flower stand. When they smelled the wine, they all turned to look at Arbor. "Wow!" Chi Xian and the others couldn't help but cry out in surprise. "Jojo, you still have such good wine hidden away. You've really hidden it well." Arbor couldn't help but feel helpless. Actually, this winter fruit wine was made by Little Tree when he was bored. Naturally, she didn't have the leisure to do so. The reason was that there were too many winter fruits. Even though she had already given Prince Mo a lot of winter fruits, there were still many left in the storage. Little Tree thought that they were taking up space, and it was a pity to throw them away. So he took all of them to make wine. "Come, let's drink." Mata laughed and raised his cup to everyone. The 9 cups clinked lightly, and a mouthful of winter fruit wine went down their stomachs. They only felt that it was sweet and pleasant. The fruit wine in their stomachs emitted a trace of heat. "This taste is too good." Chi Xian couldn't help but praise. Even someone like her who didn't drink often felt that this fruit wine was very good. There was a trace of sweetness, but it wasn't too sweet. After drinking it, she felt that her muscles and veins were very smooth. It was really good stuff. The old beggar at the side was already drooling. He scratched his ears and cheeks as he stood beside Arbor's table with a strange expression. "Little girl, is this wine really brewed from the winter fruit?" The old man, with rosacea, asked curiously. It was not like he had never tasted winter fruit wine before, but how could it taste so strong? "It's winter fruit wine." Arbor nodded with certainty. But these winter fruits had been soaked in holy water for a while. At that time, Arbor originally wanted to make chilled winter fruit, but it was soaked there for a long time without being touched. When she remembered, the impatient sapling had already disposed of it. So what could she say? The old man with rosacea ran to Arbor's side and chuckled. "Little girl, can you give this old man a sip of your wine?" Arbor saw his bright eyes staring straight at the jade gourd in her hand. When he spoke, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. It was obvious that he was an alcoholic. "Okay, I'll share with you." Arbor nodded reluctantly. "Since you're an old man." Arbor held the wine gourd and poured wine for the old man. The old man watched from the side and urged more and more. "Little girl, don't be stingy. Your wine gourd clearly contains dozens of barrels of wine. Giving this old man a big bowl won't be a loss." Arbor's eyes flashed. She poured half a bowl and stopped. "Tell me who you are, and I'll fill it up for you." There were so many people present, but no one noticed anything strange about her jade gourd. Why did this old man have better eyesight than others? Chapter 1762. No one would believe him if he said he wasn't a hermit expert. The old man pursed his lips and gave Arbor a sidelong glance. "How can a little doll like you talk like that? I'm just an ordinary old beggar." Arbor naturally didn't believe him and snorted softly. Seeing her withdrawing her hand and about to take back the jade gourd, the old man instantly panicked and made a fuss. Hey, what exactly do you want to know, little doll? Tell me. Do you dare to say that you didn't purposely approach me for some purpose?" Arbor asked indifferently. The old man immediately put on an innocent look and chuckled. What purpose could this old man have? This old man smelled the wine, and the alcohol bug in my stomach flared up, so I ran over to ask a little doll like you for a cup of wine. The old beggar did his best to put on a pleased look at my sincere, old face look. "Oh, is that so?" Arbor couldn't help but scoff. "Stop pretending. With your eyesight, you can tell that my jade gourd is different from the rest at a glance, and you still dare to say that you're not an expert?" The old man hastily waved his hand and said, "No, no, it's you who's thinking too much, little doll." After saying that, the old man simply dragged a stool from the side and squeezed his way to Arbor's side to sit down. He said with a grin, "Forget it, seeing that you rewarded this old man with a mouthful of wine. This old man will give you something good, so that a little doll like you won't always think that this old man is a swindler." Arbor was a bit amused inwardly, but she didn't show it on her face. No matter how the old man looked at her little stoic face, he couldn't make out any clues. The old man couldn't help but feel a bit exasperated and dissatisfied with her attitude. He pressed, "Don't tell me you're not the least bit curious? Shouldn't such a young little girl immediately reveal an interested expression and ask what he was going to give her when she heard someone say that he was going to give her a gift? Why didn't this little fellow in front of him follow the routine at all?" A certain Jojo, who didn't fall for the old man's trick, blinked and asked along with the old man's words, "Then what do you want to give me, old grandpa?" The old man's face instantly lit up with joy, and he slapped his thigh and said with a smile, "Yeah, that's right. Little girl, don't pretend to be old all day." Arbor's mouth twitched, but she didn't argue. "How about this? You give me 2 full bowls, and I'll let you see that good thing." Hearing this, Mata couldn't help but laugh. "You old man, don't tell me you're here to cheat us of our wine? Young man, don't talk nonsense. Am I that kind of person?" The Jojos is Jojo, st. Estidues juice jot estis estes. Tis have 8 st. Arbor tilted her little head. "Old grandpa, other than wine, I also have side dishes to go with it. Do you want some?" The old man's eyes lit up when he heard that. Come. You little child, you're so mean. You only thought of side dishes after watching this old man drink for so long. This old man was a natural socializer. He didn't feel the least bit embarrassed about extorting a little girl like this. Arbor waved her hand and took out a plate of spicy yellow croakers. She held it in her arms and said, "Old grandpa, what good stuff do you have?" Chapter 1763. The corners of the old man's mouth twitched. "You stingy girl, you really don't act unless you see an incentive. Here, don't say that this old man cheated you of your food and wine. This is for you." Then he reached into his robes and took out a round transparent ball. He threw it in front of the little fellow and was done with it. The little fellow raised her hand and took a look at the transparent ball, only to see that there was still half a wall of water rippling inside. A unique, richly ornamented 3-story boat, which looked like a model, was drifting with the waves inside. Her small hand shook the transparent ball. Arbor could clearly sense that this was not some condensed, mystic domain similar to the heart of paradise. Thus, she could not let her little tree take it in and make it into a new planet. So what was the use of it? She turned to look at the little old man and pursed her lips. "Old grandpa, what is this?" It looks quite unique." Chi Xian and young master Zhu both leaned over and took the small ball. They held it in their hands and admired it. Arbor, however, did not think much of it. What was the use of giving a small model that could only be admired and played with? "You really don't know what's good for you." The old man blew his beard and glared at her. Then he pointed at Duanmuqing. "Explain it to this little girl." He looked like he was busy drinking and eating and could not be bothered to speak to Arbor. Duanmuqing turned to look at Arbor and said softly, "Jojo, quickly thank this senior." The old man waved his hand and used his chopsticks to pick up the small yellow croaker. "There's no need to thank me. Why don't you bring 2 more dishes to this old man? I was right to say that you were stingy. You were only willing to give me 1 dish. Why aren't you stingy to death?" Xiaomu blinked her large, black eyes. She took the transparent ball that little young Sir Zhu handed over and shook it vigorously. "What is it?" "This is a sealing ball. It can seal large objects inside. When the time comes, the outer seal can be broken and the object inside can be taken." "Sealing ball? Never heard of it." Arbor raised his hand to touch the sphere and asked curiously, "You mean there's a real 3-story ship sealed in this sphere?" Duanmuqing nodded and looked at the old man with some confusion. This old man was dressed in rags and had a wretched appearance. Who would have thought that once he made a move, he would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat? This priceless sealing ball was very rare. It was also very rare in the Divine Continent, let alone in the Shuntian Prefecture. "Grandpa, what benefits do you want?" Arbor turned around and asked the old man. He was slightly wary. "I don't have anything valuable to exchange with you." "Bah!" The old man couldn't help but want to spit on this child's face. How could he not know the extent of this little fellow's wealth? That was someone who could casually drop a spirit tool. Yet here, he was complaining about being poor in front of this old man. Arbor raised his hand and touched his little face that wasn't spat on. He squeezed towards Xian with a look of disdain. "Why are you spitting on me? Don't deny it when I say that you're stingy." The old man blew his beard and glared. "This old man may be poor, but I won't go so far as to cheat a child like you. This thing is for you to play with. You don't have to spend money to exchange for it." "Oh." Arbor was indifferent. He reached out and kept the sealing ball back into his inner world. The old man was immediately angered to the point of laughter. Look, this little girl did it on purpose." Chapter 1764. This stinky lass was clearly waiting for him to finish his sentence so that she could naturally and calmly keep the item away. "Old Grandpa, do you want another bowl?" Arbor asked in a small voice. "Bah." Even if he drank himself to death, he wouldn't be able to drink it back that the old man glared at her in annoyance and then placed the empty bowl in front of her. "Do you still need to ask?" "Fill it up." Everyone couldn't help but laugh. This ship is called Red Firmament Blue Waves. Not to mention the ordinary rivers, lakes, and seas. You can even go to the lower star field and the upper 3 continents. The old man snorted. Arbor's eyes lit up when she heard that. Go in the water, swim in the fire? Can you go up to the sky? I already told you that you're called Qi Xiao. The old man angrily reached out his hand and smacked her little head. "Then if you give this ship to me, how are you going to go back, old grandpa?" Arbor raised her hand to cover her head and asked curiously. "It's none of your business. I have my own way of going back." The old man suddenly came back to his senses and couldn't help but laugh. "You little doll, you've learned how to trick me, haven't you?" His answer was obviously admitting that he was from the Divine Continent. This old man doesn't care about you anymore." The old man, who was in a bad mood after being tricked, angrily took out a wooden wine gourd from his chest. "Fill it up." Arbor glanced at his gourd and pursed her lips. "Even if I pour the entire gourd out for you, it might not be able to fill it up. Darn brat, you're really not easy to trick." That's right, this gourd of his was also a treasure. He originally wanted to trick the little girl, but who would have thought that she would see right through him? How infuriating, the old man said angrily. "Then I'll pour half of it." Arbor looked at the old child helplessly and nodded. She slapped her hand, and a stream of wine instantly shot out from the jade gourd. It formed a winding curve and accurately entered the black wooden gourd in the old man's hand. The old man nodded and said, "Little doll, your technique is not bad. Quick, give me more. You stingy doll, how is this half? It's not even a third full." The old man noisily asked Arbor to give him half a gourd of winter fruit wine before he clicked his tongue in satisfaction. He reached out and finished the remaining wine in the bowl. Then he put the bowl into his bosom and waved his hand. He stood up and said, "There's no need to send me off." Everyone was speechless as they watched the old man leave. However, after taking 2 steps, he turned back and took the half plate of small yellow croakers from the table into his arms. Only then did he wave his hand and leave in satisfaction. Qi Xian could not help but laugh. This strange old man is really strange. "I can't see through this old man's cultivation," Duanmu said calmly. "I'm afraid he's a God State expert." Little Fatty could not help being stunned when he heard that. He did not expect that old man was actually a deity realm expert. One had to know that in the 6 prefectures continent, deity realm experts were extremely rare. If a clan had a deity realm expert overseeing it, then it could be considered a medium-sized clan. Young Master Zhu nodded and said, "That's right. The old man is so skilled in martial arts, yet he disguised himself as a ragged beggar and walked around our Shuntian continent. He must be a hidden expert." Arbor could not help but secretly twitch the corner of her mouth. She did not know why, but she felt that the old man's ragged clothes could not be so high and mighty. Perhaps it was because he was poor. Chapter 1765. After the old man hugged his wine gourd and walked out of the flower rack, he looked down at his tattered clothes and couldn't help but slap his old hand hard. You won't be able to swallow your pride. If he had asked for spirit coins from that damn child just now, wouldn't he have been able to get rid of his tattered clothes? Angrily, he found a doorstep and sat down. Then he took out a communication jade talisman from his pocket and wrote on it, "Third brother, are you blind? The crown prince's wife is stingy. How could he be an interesting person? Don't you know how stingy she is?" Thinking of that expressionless face, the old man couldn't help but feel his teeth ache. In the future, if he were to bring this master back, it would be very lively. The emperor's cold face against his daughter-in-law's expressionless face. Cough, cough. Who knows who would win? Arbor's group drank 2 more cups of winter fruit wine under the flower rack. During this time, a few old men boldly came forward to ask for more, and Arbor gave it all to them. Thus, the other old men sitting under the flower rack also came forward to try half a cup of winter fruit wine. Fortunately, Arbor's small jade gourd actually contained dozens of barrels of wine. Even if she gave half to the old man with rosacea, the winter fruit wine inside was enough for thousands of people to drink. There were only a dozen old men present, so it didn't matter. I really didn't expect that we would meet an old man giving Jojo a gift while we were strolling on the street. Mata couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He had heard of the Red Nimbus Blue Wave ship before, but he couldn't recall it at first. This ship could truly travel between the 6 prefectures of the Lower Star Field and the 3 prefectures of the Upper Star Field. As expected, good-looking people would eat and drink, well, wherever they went. Otherwise, how could you explain why a beggar would give Jojo a gift? Arbor didn't think much of it. Although she didn't know what the old man's motive was, she didn't need to guess to know one thing. The old man gave this ship to her in hopes that she would bring Prince Mo back to the Divine Prefecture. However, why did they have to obediently return when someone else summoned them? What kind of joke was this? He would still accept the gift. As for whether he would return it or not, that would depend on his mood. She wouldn't leave the 6 prefectures continent until she dealt with the Clear Sky sect and found Fangu and Fan Shioha. It was unknown which rat hole Fan Shioha was hiding in, or whether he had become moldy or stinky. Arbor coldly closed his eyes and calmly put away the wine gourd. Let's go. It's getting late. I need to get a good night's sleep. I still have to play tomorrow morning. Young Master Zhu, on the other hand, seemed rather excited. The fruit wine was mild, and Arbor allowed him to drink half a cup. At this moment, Master Zhu's baby face was very red, and his complexion looked very good. Jojo, how about I come to the underground arena to watch your match tomorrow? Young Master Zhu pleaded. It's not safe in the city recently. If you go out alone, your father will be worried. Arbor said faintly. Even a fool could see that the 3 noble families in Wenka City were fighting each other. Young Master Zhu's safety would be compromised if he went out recklessly. Zhu Su hurriedly said, I'll bring more people with me. Arbor frowned slightly. You drank half a cup of wine today. You might have a headache tomorrow. Why don't you rest for a few days before going out? Young Master Zhu immediately wilted. Arbor ignored him. She stood up with the others and walked to the carriage parked at the corner of a long street. Chapter 1766. Before they reached the carriage, Arbor's eyes suddenly narrowed. Her footsteps suddenly stopped, and the people around her also stopped with strange expressions on their faces. Suddenly, a group of hooligans with machetes appeared from the corner. The machetes in their hands were brandished at the crowd. However, how could these ordinary hooligans be a match for Arbor and the rest? Qi Xian and the rest kicked away the hooligans who got close. However, because there were too many hooligans in the fight, Arbor and the rest were subconsciously separated by a certain distance. Duan Muqing's expression was cold. He raised his hand, and a few thorns drilled out from the ground, directly binding a few men who rushed forward to catch them. In just a few exchanges, several local ruffians and hooligans were hung high on the thorns of the wood brambles, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws while howling. Duan Muqing acted as though he didn't hear the hooligan screams and took care of a few more before turning to look at Arbor, who was handling the crowd with ease. Arbor's moves were very decisive and powerful. Basically, those hooligans were completely taken care of by her fist before they could even get close to her. Arbor didn't give any face to these people who suddenly rushed out with bad intentions. She also didn't think that she was too heavy-handed, since they dared to run out to make trouble for her, Xiao Mu, after accepting money. Then they were probably prepared to die. The leader of the hooligans had a fierce look on his face. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of Arbor and the rest, he hurriedly whistled, "Go." They were just the vanguard team who came to stir up trouble. When the time came, they just had to retreat. However, dreams were beautiful, but reality was extremely cruel. Arbor waved her slender hand and threw the unconscious body of a hooligan onto the leader of the hooligans. The hooligan cried out in pain and took a few steps back. "Stop them," Arbor said calmly. At the same time, a little white squirrel jumped down from her shoulder and scurried back and forth in the crowd. Everyone who was bitten by the little squirrel howled and fell to the ground. Only then did the group of hooligans know fear. They realized that the people in front of them were not people they could provoke. Go, 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 go. Seeing that the reinforcements still hadn't arrived, the local ruffian couldn't help but panic. He had received a large sum of money and brought his men here to stop Arbor's group. To put it bluntly, he had no idea why they had set this up. Seeing that they were going to die in Arbor's hands if this went on, the local ruffian couldn't help but panic. He hurriedly shouted, "Everyone, please stop. Listen to me first." Qi Xianxian couldn't help but laugh. "Oh, you're here to look for trouble, but you can't win. Now you know how to beg for mercy?" "It's useless to shout and beg for mercy." Mata rolled his eyes and said loudly, "You bunch of little bastards, leave your lives here. You dare to cause trouble in front of your grandpa Mata? You deserve to end up like this." Bang! In the midst of the chaos, a loud bang came from where the carriage was parked at the corner of the street. It was as if the entire carriage had been blown up by something. Xiao Mu and the others were taken aback, and they hastily walked over when they saw that their carriage had been blown to smithereens. Chapter 1767. Arbor couldn't help but be enraged. What kind of joke was this? She was the one who hired the carriage. Now that these people blew up her carriage, wouldn't she have to dig out spirit coins to pay for the carriage's repair fees? At the thought of this, Arbor couldn't help but gnash his teeth in anger. Qi Xianxian also stomped her feet and wailed, "Fuck! Which bastard dared to blow up your family's great-aunt's carriage? Come out!" Arbor reached out and lightly tugged at little young Master Zhu's sleeve. "Don't run around, and don't leave my side easily, okay?" Zhu Su wasn't a fool. Although his experience in the pugilistic world was very shallow, he was someone who loved reading and paid attention to thinking. Therefore, he was at most inexperienced in the world, but his brain was still relatively smart. From the looks of it, they seemed to be coming for him. Jojo and the rest were probably implicated by him. At this thought, little young Master Zhu couldn't help but feel a bit gloomy. "Jojo, I feel that this group of people is most likely coming for me. I'm sorry, I've made everyone unhappy." Seeing little young Master Zhu's gloomy appearance, Qi Xianxian couldn't help but chuckle. "What does this have to do with you?" "It's completely because these people don't have eyes and want to bump into our blades." Mata even laughed out loud. "It's fine. Let me tell you, I was still fretting that there wouldn't be anyone for me to practice with after I advanced. Although these people's martial arts skills are mediocre, it's still better than nothing." His aggrieved tone made it seem like this group of local ruffians and hooligans were completely a bunch of trash that simply couldn't take a few punches from him. At this time, another group of people came out from behind the exploded carriage. They were completely different from this group of small fries with meager martial arts skills. These people who jumped out to besiege them were basically all level 14 mystic cultivators and above. There were a total of 30 people who came. They surrounded Arbor and the rest in the middle, while the outer layer was a grandiose group of local ruffians. At a glance, the situation seemed to be very unfavorable for Arbor and the rest. In fact, in the eyes of Arbor and the others, the latter group was also very weak. Take the little fatty, for example. He could send 2 people flying with a single punch, so one could imagine how much of an overstatement the cultivation of these newly emerged level 14 mystic cultivators was. The advancement of one's cultivation base was divided into 2 categories: cultivation through hard work and rapid advancement through medicine. For trash like them who relied solely on medicine, when they met an opponent of the same level, they would be killed in an instant. After Arbor dealt with the people around him, he tugged on young Master Zhu's sleeve and took a few steps forward. She only saw a black shadow, like a great rock spreading its wings, fly in front of her with a whoosh. Raising his hand, he grabbed young Master Zhu, who was beside her, without any explanation. How could Arbor allow anyone to lay a finger on young Master Zhu? With a fierce kick, he took the opportunity to push Master Zhu behind him. Without hesitation, a row of silver needles flew out. They were divided into 3 parts: the upper part, the middle part, and the lower part. They went straight for the man's eyes, chest, and lower abdomen. These 3 ruthless rows of needles came rather quickly. The man was startled and hastily retreated backward with swift reflexes. Following that, he dodged and hovered in the air for 2 laps. When he steadied himself, he looked back. He saw that several local ruffians and hooligans didn't escape and became his scapegoats. At this time, these local ruffians all had silver needles stuck in their chests. They were foaming at the mouth and had their eyes tightly shut. It was obvious that they had already fainted. Chapter 1768. It didn't look like a lethal poison, but it was indeed vicious to be able to cause a person to faint in an instant. Who knew if these local ruffians and hooligans could wake up again? That person clearly didn't expect Arbor's reaction to be so fast. After failing to grab him, he immediately drew a flexible sword from his waist and charged behind Arbor in the direction of little young Master Zhu. How could Arbor let him touch Zhu Su? His gaze sharpened, and a stream of water coiled around his palm and abruptly struck the man's sword-wielding wrist. As a result, that man's flexible sword abruptly shifted to the side, and he also dodged to the side. A powerful spiritual energy seeped out of the flexible sword tip and pounced toward Arbor and little young Master Zhu from a distance, abruptly creating a spiritual energy vortex. Arbor promptly made a decision and set up a defensive barrier in front of him, blocking all of the man's attacks. A shooting star powder was mercilessly flung over. With a series of clanking sounds, the man used his flexible sword to hastily deflect that shooting star powder, but more than half of the local ruffians and hooligans around him were caught in the crossfire. This group of local ruffians and hooligans fell to the ground and wailed as they rolled around under the shooting star powder. Qi Xian and the others didn't care about their lives and either stepped on them or kicked them away to prevent them from blocking the way. They didn't take them seriously at all. This caused the group of people to wail and cry for their parents. All of them rolled around on the ground, hating that their parents didn't give them an extra pair of hands so that they could quickly crawl away from this bloody battle. Little Fatty's group of 7 started fighting with a group of level 14 and above mystic cultivators. Although the other party had the advantage in numbers, their combat strength wasn't too strong, so they were relatively easy to deal with. As for Arbor, he only needed to protect that little young Master Zhu. When the mystic cultivators who arrived later saw that they couldn't take down a few young men and women despite having so many people on their side, they couldn't help but feel anxious, and their attacks also intensified. Someone roared, "Berserk Tiger," and a ferocious tiger suddenly jumped out from behind him. Qi Xianxian glanced at it and couldn't help but sneer. "Where's the mystic beast you summoned?" As soon as he finished speaking, the golden lion roared and jumped out majestically. Without any explanation, it slapped the tiger summoned by the man and sent it flying. Wah! That level, 14 mystic cultivators spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Qi Xianxian in horror. To be able to kill his own Xian beast with a single slap, how powerful must it be? If it weren't for the fact that his beast was on the verge of death, he wouldn't have suffered such a severe backlash. The golden-haired lion seemed to have entered a no-man's land, sweeping away all the little ruffians in front of it with one paw. The person who was fighting Arbor saw that the situation was not good, so he hurriedly gave a look to his disciples. He stretched out his leg and kicked a few of the ruffians' buttocks, making them fly in front of Arbor, while he quickly retreated. Arbor coldly swept a glance over and tossed little young master, Zhu, to Qi Xianxian and the others to protect. She had already shot out and leaped onto the snow leopard's back in a few steps, patting its head. The snow leopard quickly chased after him and madly dashed around the streets with the man for a while before stopping in front of a vermilion gate. The gate was tightly shut, and there was a mighty stone lion squatting on each side of the gate. A vermilion plaque hung in the middle with the words "U Estate" written on it. Arbor's cold gaze landed on the U Estate's tightly shut gate, and an ebony talisman automatically floated into her hand. Chapter 1769. With a light flick of her finger, the ebony talisman quickly disappeared into the air. Xiao Mu expressionlessly raised her hand, and several hundred normal talisman papers rose from her fingertips in the blink of an eye. They flew up in an orderly fashion and floated above the U Estate in a single file, imperceptibly constructing a large-scale talisman matrix. This large talisman formation was made up of 324 ordinary yellow talismans. Once the talisman formation was formed, unless the people of the U residence broke the formation from the inside, they would be locked inside and unable to find a way out. This was a maze array, and it was one that Arbor had personally researched and improved. If she used a large maze array and threw out 648 yellow talismans, she could lock down the entire street where the U residence was located. When Qi Xianxian and the others arrived, they saw Arbor sitting in front of the U residence with a stool. Her stoic face was expressionless. Jojo. Qi Xianxian hurried over, followed by the pale-faced young Master Zhu. Arbor raised her head and glanced at him. She softly reprimanded, "Useless. You're so scared that your face turned white over such a small matter?" Although she was reprimanding him, she shot out several beams of white light with a flick of her finger. Silver needles entered his acupoints, and Zhu Su's complexion improved slightly. Arbor retrieved the silver needles from the air and tossed him a small medicine bottle. "Take it." Young Master Zhu stuttered as he took the medicine bottle and took a calming pill. Only then did he feel the panic in his heart subside slightly. He had been well protected by his father since he was young. He had never seen such a chaotic situation of being hunted down. He didn't expect to hit the jackpot on his first trip out. Little Fatty looked at young Master Zhu sympathetically. Although his family background was not as good as young Master Zhu's, his body was strong. He was not like young Master Zhu, who panted after running a few steps and his heart pounded wildly. When your body fully recovers, cultivate properly. Little Fatty patted young Master Zhu's shoulder and said with a smile, "Your body is too weak." The youth blushed slightly and hurriedly nodded. "Jojo, why are we blocking the entrance of a U residence?" Qi Xianxian looked curiously at Arbor and asked. "Compensation," Arbor said indifferently. He didn't feel at all that it was ridiculous for him to block the entrance of the U residence and ask for compensation. The people from the U residence had smashed her carriage into smithereens. Shouldn't this debt be settled with them? Did they really think that Arbor was a pushover? She wasn't a fool. She had to compensate, and she had to compensate 10 times the amount. Otherwise, any cat or dog would be able to bully her and casually take away her ride. Wouldn't it? Looking at the completely serious expression on that stoic little face, everyone silently suppressed their laughter and put on a solemn expression as they nodded in unison. "That's right. Compensation should be made. Their family head is called Yu Batian, right?" Mata said with a smile. "Should we call inside?" Arbor nodded. "Yes. Tell Yu Batian to pay 1,000,000 spirit coins as compensation for the loss of the carriage." Everyone was speechless. "You're asking for such an exorbitant price. Does your conscience not hurt?" "All right." Mata cleared his throat and immediately shouted at the Yu family. "Family head Yu, We're the ones who were chased by your family's disciples just now. We've already sealed off the U residence. Don't try in vain to escape with your own abilities. That's impossible. Obediently hand over 1,000,000 spirit coins as a fine, and this debt will be temporarily written off. Chapter 1770. At this time, U Batian, who was in the inner chamber of a U residence, received the news from his disciple and hurried out to look at the sky. Above the house, a dark and gloomy vortex had replaced the originally bright sky. When everyone looked up, they could no longer see the blue sky and white clouds. All they could see were small vortexes. Patriarch, something bad has happened. Among the U family elders who had heard the news, an old man walked out and said with a frightened expression, "Someone has set up a talisman formation above our U residence." "What? A talisman formation?" Patriarch U asked with a puzzled expression. "Who would act so rashly against our U family?" At this time, Mata's loud shout reached the ears of everyone in the U family. Everyone, including U Batian, heard Mata's shout as long as they weren't deaf. U Batian trembled with anger. These people are really bold. They actually dared to ask for 1,000,000 spirit coins? Did they really think that he, U Batian, was a fool? Not to mention 1,000,000 spirit coins. U Batian didn't even plan to pay half a spirit coin. Go, gather all the U family disciples. Later, follow this old man to the main gate. He didn't believe that a mere talisman formation could stop so many people in the U family from going out at the same time. U Batian waved his hand in high spirits, instructing the elders to gather all the disciples and gather at the main gate. The elder who had spoken earlier took a step forward with a face full of worry. He raised his head to look at the sky formed by the vortex and helplessly said, "Patriarch, there are many times when you and I have never heard of or seen the methods of a symbol master. We don't know what level of talisman master the other party is. If it's a high-level great talisman master, I feel that our family really might not be able to get out of this talisman formation this time." U Batian couldn't help but be furious. "Elder son, why do you always boost the morale of others and diminish our own? I don't believe that such a small talisman formation can be used. There are so many people in the U family. Can we just fight our way out? We're locked up in the residence. Are we just going to sit here and do nothing?" The elder sighed. "Patriarch, it's better to be cautious. Since the other party came in such a menacing manner and demanded that we hand over 11,000,000 spirit coins, we won't be allowed to leave the house if we don't. That means that the other party has made thorough preparations beforehand. Even if we force our way out, we might suffer heavy losses." U Batian glanced at the elder. "Scared? Just stay at home and don't go out." After saying this, he flicked his sleeves and left. The elders looked at each other, and one of them couldn't help but ask, "Elder son, what do you think of this matter?" Elder son shook his head and sighed as he looked at Patriarch U's obstinate back. Then, he followed behind Patriarch U with several other elders. Soon, more than 300 young disciples of the U family were summoned to Patriarch U's side. Family head U looked at the disciples and said with righteous indignation, "Everyone, you should have heard what the person outside the door said. As a member of the U family, I, like all of you, abhor this. We absolutely won't bow our heads to the evil forces outside. Our U family can be beheaded and shed blood, but we will never abandon our belief in fighting for the glory of our family." Chapter 1771. The group of family head roared a few times. Their faces were filled with emotion. It was as if the people outside were in front of them right now, the U family disciples would immediately tear them apart. Family head U stretched out his hands and gently pressed down, stopping everyone's roars. Then he sneered and said, "Among the young disciples of my U family, you are the most outstanding. Now, I will lead you out of this talisman array. Is everyone confident?" "Yes," everyone repeated several times, making family head U very satisfied. Thus, he led the group of disciples valiantly and energetically to the gate. Family head U felt that his understanding of the U family's gate was quite high. Not to mention walking the path from the U family's gate to the inner court 8 times a day. It was sometimes possible to walk it more than 10 times. But today was so strange. No matter where he went, he would still return to the place where he had gathered everyone. After repeated trips like this, even an idiot would know that there was a problem with the path in this house. A disciple couldn't help but ask weakly, "Family head, is there a problem? Can we really get out by ourselves?" There seemed to be a problem with this gate, right? It seemed that they could go anywhere. For example, the courtyard of the house, the back garden, and so on. There was no problem walking there. The main problem was that the gate seemed to be blocked. No matter how they walked, they couldn't reach the gate. The more the disciples walked, the less confident they became. Although they didn't say it out loud, they couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. "Family head," you said with a cold face, "don't worry. With me leading you out, you will find a way no matter what." They went back and forth like this countless times. Family head, you and the others didn't know that they seemed to have lost the concept of time. They were like headless flies wandering around the U family. At this time, it was already late at night. Arbor's group naturally wouldn't foolishly stand outside someone's gate and wait for them to surrender. The group sent young Master Zhu back to his residence and returned to their inn as if nothing had happened. They had a good night's sleep and continued to play the competition the next day. The unlucky family head, you had brought more than 300 U family disciples to wander back and forth in his own home. It wasn't until the 300 disciples were lying on the ground like dogs and couldn't move that Patriarch you realized that he couldn't even distinguish between day and night in this talisman array. The main reason was that the sky was blocked by the vortex, making it impossible to see the original sky. Arbor's group waited until they finished a day's worth of matches before leisurely arriving at Umanor's entrance. Mata chuckled. Then he turned to the U family and said, "Patriarch you, have you considered it? If you pay 2 million spirit coins today, you can set your whole family free." Everyone in the U family fell silent for a moment. Suddenly, Ubatian's angry roar could be heard throughout the entire street. "Shameless rascal. Don't even think about getting a single spirit coin from my U clan." Oh, Mata wasn't disappointed. He just curled his lips and continued to shout, "Since that's the case, Master Yu, let's part ways here. We'll come to see you again tomorrow." Patriarch was so angry that his eyes rolled back, and he almost fainted. "Who asked you to come back tomorrow?" Mata and Patriarch Yu's voices weren't low. Not only could the entire street hear them, but almost half of the pedestrians and peddlers on the street could hear them as well. Chapter 1772. For 3 days in a row, Arbor brought a group of wicked friends to the U family and shouted at them every time. "Family Master Yu, 4 million spirit coins can't buy you a trick. 4 million spirit coins can't buy you regret. If you don't agree today, the price will increase tomorrow." The passers-by couldn't help but twitch their mouths when they heard this. Fuck, when don't you raise the price? You make it sound like the price is going to increase on the first day. Actually, these masters came to the U family's door every day to shout, and the price increased by 1 million spirit coins a day. Family Master Yu was probably hiding at home, crying and not daring to see anyone. His courtyard was sealed with talismans, and a day ago, he used a message talisman to inform the best talisman master in Anka City to come and help. In the end, the talisman told him bluntly, "Sorry, the maze above your house is made of 328 yellow talismans, and it's extremely difficult to crack. Unless the talisman master who cast the talismans removed it himself, it would take him at least 49 days to crack it." As a result, Family Head You was done for 0.49 days to break the talismans and let them out. Wouldn't it be too late if he waited too long? Moreover, the talisman master who had some friendship with him also told him clearly that the talisman master who cast the talismans above his house was of a higher level than him. How could Family Master You endure this? The biggest problem Family Master You was facing now was that he couldn't swallow his pride and admit defeat. After all, he had been stubborn for nearly 4 days. The Yu family was locked up at home and didn't know whether it was day or night. How could he predict that they would be locked up at home for 4 days? It was actually very simple. According to the talisman master who cast the talismans, he would increase the price by 1 million spirit coins every day, So this was the fourth night that although Family Master Yu was very angry, he couldn't do anything to the Talisman Master whom he had never met. If he wanted to kill someone, he had to at least get out of this maze first. Mata, who was shouting outside, curled his lips after a while and said, "It seems that we really don't have a chance today. All right, then. Family Master Yu, take care of yourself. We'll come to see you tomorrow. Oh, by the way, remember to count the spirit coins." The passers-by, could this brat be any more shameless? Those who didn't know would have thought that it was some filial son shouting outside the door. Who would have thought that it was Family Head Yu's group of debt collectors? All right, Jojo, I don't think Master Yu will fork out any money today. Let's go back first. Arbor nodded. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he heard an angry roar from the Yu family's direction. Cheaper. Arbor couldn't help but be furious. He shot Mata a look. Mata immediately roared back at Patriarch Yu. Bah, you made us stand here like idiots and shout at you for 4 consecutive nights. Cheat my ass. The buyout was 5 million. If we're a minute late, we'll have to raise the price again. Little Fatty's mouth twitched, and he secretly gave Mata an awesome hand gesture. Patriarch Yu was about to go mad with anger. He couldn't help but roar. If you have the guts, remove this talisman array and have a fair fight with me. Bah, who wants to fight with you? 5 million. We'll remove the array after you pay. Ubatian was angry and resentful. He sat at a stone table and forcefully massaged his chest to soothe his anger. Suddenly, a spirit coin card floated in front of Arbor and the others. The little guy stretched out his finger and caught it. Chapter 1773. What is this? Miss Chow expressed that she didn't like this little card. I want spirit coins, the kind that can be counted piece by piece. Everyone, they didn't know what this lady liked. She was obviously a tycoon, but she liked to hold her purse and count her money when no one was around. This is a spirit coin card that can be used in the 6 prefectures continent. Duan Muqing coughed lightly and said, "It can be exchanged at any bank. It can also be used in normal shops and auction houses, so there shouldn't be a problem." Arbor immediately expressed her displeasure. "It's so light." Everyone was speechless. The little lady was complaining that this card was too light. Of course, it wasn't as heavy as counting spirit coins piece by piece, but wasn't it more convenient for trade? Let's go. Arbor put away the 5 million spirit coin card and said worriedly, "Let's find a shop and swipe it. Don't skimp on it." Duan Muqing was speechless. Everyone followed her to the corner of the street. Little Fatty couldn't help but scratch his head. "I feel like we've missed something." Qi Xianxian suddenly thought of something and exclaimed, "Jojo, we took the Yu clan's money, but we haven't dispelled their array yet." Arbor nodded indifferently. Her expression clearly told them that she had noticed it long ago. Is this okay?" Qi Xianxian stammered. She was an honest child. When Jojo said that he would give her the money and she would give him the goods, she felt that he was honest and reliable. But now that the other party had already paid, they abandoned him and ran away. This didn't seem right. Arbor said indifferently, "The talisman energy in this array can last for 5 days at most. The array will disappear tomorrow morning." So that she didn't need to waste any effort. She didn't need to do anything at all. Actually, even if Family Head you didn't give the 5 million spirit coins today, the array would disappear tomorrow morning. So, Family Head you gave the money that it was a huge loss. Everyone couldn't help but complain in their hearts. Poor Family Head you. Of all people to offend, he had to offend such a jinx that my Joe division line. In the underground arena, Arbor was sitting in the spectator seats, his eyes fixed on the arena. At present, Xiao Mu's team Lychee had already obtained 1,540 points, and they were firmly in first place in the championship. On the other hand, the Oxbow team, which was originally in first place, had a total of 102 points. The Bitter team Longan worked very hard every day to play the competition. Now, they had accumulated 508 points and were barely ranked 54th out for the past 2 days. No one had challenged Arbor. Arbor had nothing to do, so he led Mata and the others to the service counter and distributed the 500 points to Team Lychee. Thus, everyone suddenly realized that Team Longan, who was originally ranked behind, had suddenly rushed to the second place at an extremely strange speed. With a total of 1,008 points, they instantly overwhelmed the Oxbull team. When Arbor, Mata, and the others returned to the arena, they heard a clamor in the arena. There was actually a person standing in the center of the arena with his hands clasped behind his back. A few staff members in front of the crystal screen were shouting at her. Lady Xiao, the arena champion with 63 consecutive wins, please come up to the arena. Yu family's disciple Yu Hui wants to challenge the arena champion. Chapter 1774. Yu Hui's expression was indifferent as he looked up at the sky and stood on the small arena with his hands behind his back. That was definitely the style of an expert, and he looked very imposing. Qi Xianxian and the others were stunned. As Arbor had won 63 matches in a row and frequently self-destructed her spirit tools, her methods had reached a level that made people's hair stand on end. Thus, very few people dared to provoke her. After all, it was not a wise choice to challenge this rich girl. Rather than asking for humiliation, it was better to fight a few more matches to earn more points. As the competition neared its end, more and more people secretly regretted not being able to buy Miss Xiao to be the champion. It was obvious that Miss Xiao had an 80% to 90% chance of becoming the champion. There were only 2 days left until the end of the competition. If someone went up to challenge the champion now, even if they won the challenge, the champion would still get 80% of the points. As for the champion's points, they would have to be recalculated. This meant that even if Yu Hui won against Miss Xiao today, he would not be able to win against Team Lychee in points in the next 2 days. Team Lychee was the champion team that almost everyone thought was the champion team. Qi Xianxian glanced at the man on the small arena. Yu Hui? Is he from the Yu family? Manager Tang hurriedly nodded and said, Yu Hui is the eldest son of the Yu family. He is currently a level 3 spirit master and has a super spirit beast that is close to a divine beast by his side. Yu Hui's abilities are not to be underestimated. Miss Xiao, please be careful. Arbor nodded. She knew that Manager Tang was trying to curry favor with her. Since he was from a Yu family, she would teach him a lesson so that he would not cause trouble for her from time to time. Arbor's eyes flickered. Her body flew like a swallow and quickly flew towards the arena. The staff members in front of the crystal screen heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Miss Xiao's figure. There was a time limit to this competition. If Yu Hui was standing on the arena and Miss Xiao did not enter the arena within 15 minutes, she would forfeit the competition. Then, Yu Hui would automatically become the champion. Yu Hui stood with his hands behind his back and his back facing Arbor. His chin was raised high. From the beginning to the end, his gaze never left the altar. He was always looking at the sky. Arbor didn't care. Anyway, in her eyes, Yu Hui was just an idiot with a bad brain. Tell me, which serious challenger wouldn't be cautious and secretly observe their opponent? This idiot, on the other hand, had his eyes fixed on the sky the moment he stepped onto the stage. It was as if a cow had flown across the sky. The few staff members in front of the screen were obviously shocked by Yu Hui's attitude. They looked at each other and thought to themselves, is this person sick in the head? One of the staff members coughed lightly and said, the competition can start now. Thunderous cheers immediately erupted from the field. In fact, in every arena hegemony tournament, the main arena was the most intense and exciting. But this year's main tournament was just too ridiculous. This nouveau riche arena master was a very bad person. He would only spar with others when he was in a good mood. Most of the time, the problem was solved with a single spirit weapon. According to incomplete statistics, some professionals announced how many spirit weapons the local arena champion had squandered in this underground arena championship. Not more, not less, a total of 51 spirit weapons. In other words, more than half of her 63 consecutive victories were due to the self-destruction of spirit weapons. Chapter 1775. Of course, the nouveau riche champion didn't feel like she was being cheated at all. Wasn't the self-destruction of spirit artifacts a part of her strength? Rich. It was also a part of her strength, all right. The giant ape had thrown so many spirit artifacts to her. What else could they be used for? She didn't understand why every time she took out a spirit artifact to explode, everyone would stare at her strangely, as if she didn't know what kind of crazy thing she had done. It was simply inexplicable. Arbor's body flashed, and she was already standing in the center of the small arena. At this moment, a match in the lower arena had just ended. After the winner and loser were decided, both sides walked off the stage exhausted with injuries. For a moment, there were no more teams in the large arena. It was as if the staff had deliberately arranged for the ordinary matches to be delayed so that everyone's attention would be focused on the individual match between Arbor and Yuhui. However, the people in the arena were somewhat disapproving. They were already familiar with Miss Xiao's routine. Look, didn't this little fellow take out a spirit artifact from her inner world? At this moment, Yuhui finally glanced at Arbor. When he saw the spirit artifact in her hand, he couldn't help but sneer and snort. Do you think I'm one of those trash who went on stage in the past? You think a spirit artifact can make me step down? You're dreaming. Arbor's small hand flashed, and several more spirit artifacts appeared in her hand. Everyone looked at her speechlessly. The matches these days had really broadened their horizons. From this, they knew that there was indeed a sky beyond the sky, a man beyond a man, and a nouveau riche above a nouveau riche. Yu Hui's expression changed, but he only calmly set up a defensive barrier around him. A pair of sharp eyes stared fixedly at Arbor and said coldly, "Don't waste your energy. I've already said that I'm not one of those trash from before." Boom! A violent shock woke up some of the sleepy spectators in the back row. Everyone was shocked, and they secretly cursed in their hearts. Some were so agitated that they jumped up and tried to calm their hearts. They thought that this explosion would definitely turn young Master Yu into ashes, but who knew? Taking a closer look, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. Young Master Yu was protected in the arms of a spirit beast that looked like a pangolin, completely shielding him from the whirlpool caused by the explosion. This spirit pangolin used its back to block the power of the four spirit tools' self-detonation. The remnant spiritual energy was completely blocked by it, and young Master Yu, who was in his arms, was not harmed at all. As expected, it was a super spiritual beast that was infinitely close to a divine beast. Its defensive ability was not something that other small spirit beasts could compare to. The crowd burst into an uproar in an instant. Someone laughed wildly. "Amazing! Amazing! This little girl is going to kick an iron plate." Only when one's own strength is strong enough, that is true strength. It's useless to rely on some fancy tricks. Isn't that so? The explosive power of the four spirit artifacts was blocked by the pangolin. Ha 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 ha. This is simply awesome. Young Master Yu is mighty. Let's kill this little girl and see if she can still be so arrogant. The person who cursed felt pain in his mouth as soon as he finished speaking. He reached out and touched his hand, which was full of blood. He was so frightened that he lost his head and screamed, my mouth." That person fell to the ground in pain and rolled around at the feet of others. Chapter 1776. You deserve it. Qi Xianxian coldly glanced at the man. He actually dared to curse her Jojo. He deserved to have his teeth knocked out and his mouth crooked. Duanmu Qingyi calmly retracted his hand, not showing any signs of attacking. Although the man's companion was surprised, he couldn't figure out what was going on. After looking around for a while, he could only see a dense mass of heads. He couldn't see who did it all, so he could only give up. "Old Five, are you okay?" His companion helped the man up. He could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He saw that the man called Old Fifth's lips were pierced through by a bamboo stick. To pierce a person's mouth with a bamboo stick, one's cultivation level was shocking. The man hurriedly glanced at his surroundings again. He didn't dare to stay and watch the show any longer. He hurriedly supported his companion and quickly left the arena. The arena was so big that the two men's encounter did not attract much attention. Only those who were nearby glanced at him curiously. When they saw that the man's mouth was covered in blood, they couldn't help but jump in fright. The others who did not realize what had happened were still talking about it. "Did you guys realize? None of the members of Team Lychee have a mystical beast. That's right. Of course, they realized that Team Lychee had never used mystical beasts when they fought. There was another team called Team Longan that was as strange as them. Just based on this point, they looked down on the rich girl. She had so many spiritual tools, but she did not use them on the right path. It was such a waste to use them one by one. If she used these spiritual tools to equip her teammates with mystical beasts, wouldn't she be able to increase the overall strength of her team? Therefore, it was not wrong to say that she was wasteful. When they saw that someone was able to suppress the girl, most of them were excited. After waiting for so long, they finally saw someone as powerful as young Master Yu. How could they not be happy? There were even some who took pleasure in the girl's misfortune. The girl is going to die now. Look at young Master Yu's pangolin. It's like a warrior wearing armor. Even if the girl explodes her spiritual tools, she won't be able to break through its defense. Ha ha ha. That's right. To put it bluntly, most of the people were somewhat unconvinced that a little girl had dominated the arena for so long. However, the little girl's spirit weapon's explosion was too powerful, so they had no choice but to admit defeat. Young Master Yu! Young Master Yu! It was unknown who started the shouting, but the crowd erupted into cheers of young Master Yu. Yu Hui was very satisfied with this kind of arena effect. Although he hadn't won yet, it was obvious that everyone's attention in the arena was on Yu Hui. In fact, 90% of them were hoping that Yu Hui would win. Yu Hui smiled faintly. He raised his hand and pressed down gently. Young Master Yu, young Master Yu, young Master Yu. The shouts in the arena became more and more excited. Everyone wanted nothing more than to jump up and dance as they cheered for young Master Yu. Xiao Mu expressionlessly swept them a glance. She did not understand what this bunch of clowns were up to. What's the point of using so many superficial things in a fight? Jojo, today is the 29th day. Chapter 1777. Qi Xianxian was afraid that Arbor would forget such a special good day, so she hurriedly shouted at the top of her lungs. The 29th day? Arbor really forgot about it. Wasn't today the 29th day of the underground arena tournament? What did the teachers let her say? In the first 28 days of the tournament, they couldn't summon their own mystical beasts, right? Wasn't today a coincidence? The 29th day was here. Arbor is really sullen these days. She watched others summon all kinds of mystical beasts, but it was always 2 against 1. Today, she was going to let others have a taste of what it was like to fight 4 against 2. Mocking Team Lychee for not having a mystical beast, right? Then let's let this you guys see if she has a mystical beast or not. Arbor stretched out her small hand and suddenly shouted, "Come out quickly, it's a group fight." Roar! The snow leopard was the first to jump out. It tore open its claws and smashed towards Yu Hui's head. Crack! The sharp claws immediately left a mark on the pangolin's back. The pangolin whimpered and curled up into a ball and rolled to the side. After a loud cry, the Bloodfire Phoenix spread its wings and swooped down from the sky. A line of fire immediately sprayed on the pangolin's head. Arbor couldn't help but jump up and down. Wrong hit. Hit him. What was the point of hitting a mystical beast? Even if it died, the owner would only suffer a small backlash. It was boring. Since they had already made a move, they naturally had to concentrate their firepower. At the very least, they had to beat this complacent young Master Yu unconscious. Everyone in the seating area couldn't help but rub their eyes. What was going on? It wasn't that the nouveau riche girl didn't have a mystical beast, but that she disdained to summon one. Look at this nouveau riche's equipment. The snow leopard was snow white and its fur was shiny. It was obvious that it was an extremely powerful mystical beast. Most of them couldn't even tell what level the snow leopard was. Not to mention the phoenix that swooped down. That was a fire phoenix, right? Everyone had only heard of it in legends and had never seen it with their own eyes. Now that they saw it, they couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded. The contrast was really too big. Earlier, they were still mocking the young lady, saying that she was about to be defeated by young Master Yu's pangolin. Who would have thought that within a few minutes, the little girl would immediately slap their faces in front of them? Everyone couldn't help but want to curse. What the hell were you doing in the beginning? In the first 20 days of the competition, why didn't he summon his beast every day? Messing around with the explosion of spirit artifacts was simply toying with them. Now that you've summoned these two beasts, who also want to fight you, fight my ass. In terms of battle prowess and Xian beasts, the difference between him and the little girl was like heaven and earth. Wasn't going up to the arena just asking for trouble? Wait a minute. Everyone stared blankly at the fat squirrel that had jumped down from the little girl's shoulder. The moment the fat squirrel landed, it transformed into a fat little mountain squirrel and nearly crushed the pangolin to death with its butt. Fortunately, Arbor roared at it, and the fat squirrel reluctantly retracted its paw that was about to slap the pangolin and ran over to Arbor's side. How were these two freaking beasts? Weren't these three beasts? Everyone stared at Miss Xiao in the small arena, dumbfounded. They only felt that Miss Xiao's nouveau riche level had once again been refreshed by herself today. Yui was also taken aback by her actions. Chapter 1778. 15 minutes ago, Yu Batian walked into the arena with a man with slender eyes and a melancholy aura. "Please," Yu Batian said respectfully. Yu Batian didn't expect Brother Go's strength to be infinitely close to a level 15 great spiritual master. The power of the palm he released at the Yu family was shocking. Yu Batian couldn't help but rejoice that he hadn't offended this person when they first met. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a predicament now. Brother Go lifted his robe and sat down calmly. Then he scanned the surroundings. The crowd that was still clamoring suddenly felt as if their hearts were being squeezed. This was the suppressive aura of a superior. After all, Brother Go was someone who was about to break through to level 15 great spiritual master. His spiritual pressure wasn't something ordinary people could withstand. At that moment, Duan Muqing had also realized that there was an extraordinary expert nearby. Duan Muqing looked in that direction and whispered something into the little fatty's ears. The little fatty immediately raised his head and looked over. Then he nodded and said in a low voice, "It's family head you." However, they didn't recognize the man with strong spiritual pressure beside Yu Batian. That person looked very ordinary, but he had an aura that couldn't be ignored, especially when that pair of slender eyes swept over them. Duan Muqing felt that this person gave off a very uncomfortable feeling. Duan Muqing and Fatty whispered to each other. When Yu Batian's attention also turned to them, Duan Muqing and Fatty retracted their gazes and looked ahead. Humph! Yu Batian had already seen Duan Muqing and the others. With the Yu family's influence, it was naturally one of the top forces in Anka City. It was too easy for him to find out the background of Duan Muqing and the others. However, family head, you still couldn't figure out why there was a great talisman master among this group of children. He still couldn't find out who this great talisman master was. He should be an elder of these people. If he acted rashly, he might anger this great talisman master. Therefore, Brother Go's method was the most suitable. If the little miracle doctor was injured or killed in a reasonable manner during the competition, it would save a lot of trouble. Yu Batian smiled coldly and retracted his gaze. He said to Brother Go in a low voice, "My son, Yu Hui, is about to break through to the 4th stage. Brother Go, don't worry. Today, we will definitely kill that woman on the arena. However, if that great talisman master causes trouble for our Yu clan in the future, don't worry. It was just a normal competition. If she died, she could only blame herself for not being skilled enough. Even if that great talisman master comes to trouble you, I still have a way to deal with him," Brother Go said indifferently as he stretched out his hand. Yes, thank you, Brother Go. Thank you." Patriarch Yu immediately swallowed his heart back into his stomach. With a calm expression, he looked at the arena with a slight smile. Once his son made a move, not to mention that the girl didn't even have a Xian beast. Even if there was, with her age and the fact that she came from the lower star field, it would already be pretty good for her to be able to form a contract with a level 15 profound beast. However, his son, Yu Hui, had a supreme spiritual beast that was infinitely close to a divine beast. It wasn't something that any Tom, Dick, or Harry could deal with. That before family head you could finish this thought. His mouth opened wide, and his eyes were filled with a trace of incredulity. Chapter 1779. This is what? In a few breaths' time, the little girl had suddenly summoned 3 powerful beasts. Even with Eubation's eyesight, he couldn't tell what grade that chubby squirrel was. Almost everyone's attention was completely focused on the small arena. They saw the little girl standing at the side with her hands folded, expressionlessly watching the 3 beasts rush up to beat up Yuhui. Yuhui was unable to block more than 3 moves before he was sent flying by the little fat squirrel's 2 tails. Yuhui wailed miserably as he flew out of the arena and landed heavily on the first level of the arena. Everyone was dumbstruck for a moment, as if their brains had short-circuited and couldn't connect. After a long while, they finally regained their senses. This family's Yuhui boasted that he was invincible, but in reality, he was chased off the stage by the little girl in less than a quarter of an hour. Everyone was speechless, and the entire arena let out a series of boos. Family Head Yu was so angry that his old face turned green, red, and white. He never thought that his son would be beaten up and thrown out of the arena by the other party's 3 beasts before he could officially fight with anyone. Huya! Family Head Yu suddenly stood up and shouted angrily. Yuhui fell on the first level of the arena, his head almost dizzy from the fall. Most importantly, he still hadn't reacted until now. He actually lost just like that? He hadn't even displayed his abilities. He hadn't even taken the elixir that could raise his cultivation by 3 times. Impossible. It was impossible for him to lose. Yuhui stumbled and crawled up from the ground. There was an additional claw mark on his forehead, and a trace of blood flowed down from it. The few staff members in front of the crystal screen also recovered from their shock and hurriedly announced, "Miss Xiao has won again. Let us congratulate Miss Xiao for obtaining 64 consecutive victories. She has once again refreshed our previous record for consecutive victories in the main arena." Before the staff member could finish speaking excitedly, he saw Yuhui abruptly jump back onto the small stage. He stared fixedly at Xiao Mu with a pair of scarlet eyes. That staff member was stunned and hurriedly took a few steps forward and shouted, "Come down. You've already lost. You can't enter the arena again. In our battle arena, there is no rule of fighting again after losing." Yuhui abruptly turned his head and sent a swift and fierce palm strike at the man. His spirit energy swept across the other party's body and swept him away in an instant, crashing heavily into the stone crystal screen behind him. Then he rolled down and coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood. Then he stopped moving. The other staff members hurriedly shouted anxiously and went forward to push the man's body. Their expressions changed as they went forward to check his breathing and cried out, "Dead?" The guards who were patrolling the arena hurriedly rushed forward, wanting to get onto the stage and pull down Yuhui, who had suddenly gone crazy. Unexpectedly, Yuhui suddenly took out a brocade box from his sleeve, opened the lid, and took out a crimson-red medicinal pill with a fishy smell. He threw it into his mouth, chewed it vigorously twice, and swallowed the pill with a fierce look in his eyes. Taking drugs because you can't afford to lose? Arbor glanced at Yuhui coldly and smirked. "I want you to die." Yuhui was really about to explode from anger. He originally thought that dealing with this little girl was just a matter of snapping his fingers. He had the supreme spirit beast pangolin, and the other party didn't have any spirit beast at all. He was bound to lose. Who knew that from the day she stepped into the battle arena, she had been pretending? Chapter 1780. Arbor's eyes instantly turned cold. Since he had already said that he wanted her dead, how could she not repay his kindness? "Do you know what kind of pill I took?" Yuhui looked at her with a cold smile. "A country bumpkin from the lower star field, like you wouldn't know. You've never seen it before." Arbor couldn't help but snort. She didn't want to waste her breath on him, but when she saw his arrogant expression, she couldn't help but mock him. "I think you're the one who doesn't know anything." Arbor glanced at him indifferently. More accurately, she glanced at the brocade box in his hand. "I don't even need to look at it. Just by smelling it, I know that it's nothing good." Arbor looked at him with pity. "What do you mean?" You still don't understand? Arbor's expression was indifferent as she stared at him coldly. You took this pill, which means that you're about to die. Impossible. Yui was furious as he stared coldly at Arbor. He put on a fake smile. Don't think that I'll let you live just because you said that. Arbor, do you dare to make a blood oath and fight me to the death? Arbor's gaze was like 1,000-year-old ice that sank into the depths of a cold lake. It was so cold that there wasn't a trace of heat. You don't have the right to challenge me to a battle to the death. When she said that, Yui was stunned and pounced on her like a madman. How dare you look down on me? Today, I'll let you know that I'm not that good. Slap. With the ferrule in her hand, Xiaomu swept it across fiercely, smacking the pouncing Yui's face with a smack. Feeling the pain, Yui stumbled back a few steps. He lowered his head to look at himself in disbelief, as if he had never expected that he would still be hit by Miss Chao's attack, even though he had already taken the cultivation increasing elixir. Idiot. Arbor sneered. Your pill hasn't taken effect yet. But before that, you will die. Arbor's eyes sharpened, and a line of fire suddenly shot out from the ferrule, flying towards Yui. Body securing talisman. Body securing talisman. Body securing talisman. Arbor's fingertips moved slightly, and a series of body securing talismans flew out. They directly shook in front of Yui, and talisman energy flowed out. Of course, one body securing talisman wouldn't be able to stop Yui, but what about 10? What about 100? It was indeed true that the body securing talisman would lose its effect in front of someone of a higher level. However, actual combat experience showed that if 100 body securing talismans were used at the same time, it would be enough to freeze someone several levels higher than Arbor for 10 breaths of time. In a battle between experts, not to mention 10 breaths of time, even 1 breath of time was enough. Yui looked at Arbor in shock. Sitting at the table, Patriarch Yu's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Brother Go, who was sitting beside him, unconsciously raised his eyebrows and looked ahead with a deep gaze. What's going on? My first-hand information is wrong. Is this little girl the Grand Talisman Master who set up the talisman array at the Yu family's door? No, it shouldn't be possible. How could such a young girl become a more powerful talisman master than the Grand Talisman Master of Wenka City? Moreover, that her talent and cultivation weren't bad either. How could a person have so much energy? Chapter 1781. Was he proficient in both cultivation and inscribing talismans? Even if she started drawing talismans when she was in her mother's womb, it was impossible for her to have such a high achievement in talisman drawing at such a young age. She was not a genius from a talisman family in the Divine Land, who had the protection and care of her family. This girl was just an inferior person from the Lower Star area who had only stayed in the Shuntian continent for less than a month. How could it be? How could it be? Go's eyes showed a trace of shock. Family head Yu turned his head and caught Go's gaze. He immediately said anxiously, Go, is this girl the great talisman master? Impossible. Go waved his hand coldly at family head Yu. Do you think a person who is so outstanding in martial arts can have such great achievements in talisman drawing? Then how could she have so many body securing talismans? Go frowned. I don't know. You should investigate this girl's background. Maybe she's not just an ordinary girl from the Lower Star area. Those talismans might be gifts from her teachers or elders. Don't panic. Just watch. Let's see how many talismans she could throw out. Unless her elders were rich and gave her all the talismans they had drawn for decades. But how could that be possible? It was impossible to have such stupid elders who spoiled their juniors and let them squander the talismans they had painstakingly drawn. Go's face darkened. He raised his eyes and looked at the small arena again. At this time, Xiaomu had already arrived in front of Yui in a flash. She gazed at him apathetically and directly attacked without a word, her ferrule aiming straight for his neck. If this hit, Yui's life would come to an end. However, at this critical moment, the pangolin desperately moved its body and pounced on its master. It protected Yui's head. Arbor's ferrule was so fast that it couldn't be stopped. It directly hit the pangolin's back. The pangolin's skin and flesh were torn open, and its scales were all cracked. Arbor was startled. He held the ruler in his hand and hesitated. This was her first time encountering a spirit beast that was so loyal to its master. She had to admit that she was touched. Yuhui wasn't a good person, but his super spirit beast was very honest and loyal. One had to know that animals had survival instincts in the face of life and death. Although the owner of the undead spirit beast would most likely die from the backlash, there were cases where the owner died and the spirit beast was saved. Therefore, this pangolin valued its master from the bottom of its heart and wanted to save his life. Cough, 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 what are you doing? Unexpectedly, Yuhui didn't appreciate it at all. He suddenly threw the pangolin lying on his head away and scolded, "Useless thing!" She even dared to lie on his head? Who did he think he was? He was its master. He actually dared to be so disrespectful to him. He was simply courting death. If he had known that this fellow was so useless, he wouldn't have contracted such a trash as his contracted beast. He couldn't find a more powerful spirit beast or even a divine beast to contract with. Yu Hui's fierce eyes fell on the pangolin. For a moment, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. This pangolin had been seriously injured before, and now it was thrown away by Yu Hui. Chapter 1782. The pangolin had helped Yu Hui block the attacks of the Bloodfire Phoenix, the little fat squirrel, and the snow leopard many times before. Immediately afterwards, Xiao Mu's full-powered strike with her foot had split open his skin and flesh. Now that Yu Hui had tossed him outside without any force, he crashed heavily onto the ground with a heavy thud. He didn't even have the strength to get up after making a heavy thud. Arbor looked sideways and saw that the pangolin had fallen to the ground with its belly facing the sky. It couldn't roll over for a long time, and its eyes couldn't help but be angry. "You're worse than a beast." Arbor had used the body-securing talisman to freeze Yu Hui, and the strike of the ruler was completely done with true power. If it weren't for the pangolin risking its life to protect its master, Yu Hui would have died. However, what made people's jaws drop was that the pangolin's loyalty was exchanged for the master's indifference and angry words. Why did you have to criticize your own contract beast when you almost lost your life? There is no point in living for such a person who didn't know how to repay kindness and had no morals. Arbor sneered and wiped the ruler with one hand. The cluster of flames instantly turned transparent and faintly showed signs of turning purple. Yu Hui suddenly roared, and the clothes on his upper body were instantly torn apart by a turbulent flow of spirit power. He seemed to have suddenly gone crazy, and he howled into the sky and laughed wildly. My cultivation has doubled. Ha 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 ha. The wild and arrogant laughter clearly represented the pride in his heart at this time. After the pangolin risked its life to block, Yu Hui finally digested the spirit medicine he took before, and his cultivation instantly soared by several levels. Ha ha! The feeling of watching one's own cultivation rise like riding a dragon to the heavens was simply too exhilarating. Yu Hui couldn't help but laugh out loud. He turned to look at Arbor and said with contempt, "Do you know what I'm feeling now? The feeling of approaching death." Arbor's indifferent words were like a basin of cold water that immediately extinguished Yu Hui's joy. "Bullshit," Yu Hui cursed. "You don't know how good I am right now. Look. Ha 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 ha. I went from a 3rd-level spirit master to a 6th-level spirit master, and I'm a 9th-level spirit master. Ha ha. I'm about to break through to a 10th-level spirit master. Stupid girl, why aren't you kneeling and begging for mercy? Have you seen a normal person kneeling and begging for mercy from a dead person?" Arbor sneered, and his expression was ruthless and cold. "Do you think it's a good thing for your cultivation to rise?" Yu Hui frowned. Subconsciously, he didn't want to hear Arbor's words. However, he could not help but want to know what Xiao Mu wanted to say next. "What do you mean?" Xiao Mu was not interested in explaining so much to an idiot. The advancement of one's cultivation base was a gradual process. Those cultivators who used ordinary medicinal pills could not be compared to the cultivators who cultivated through hard work, let alone Yu Hui, who used a special elixir to rapidly increase his cultivation base. It looked like his cultivation had risen to the level of a 9th-level spirit master. But in reality, this was just a flash in the pan, like a person who painted a pie to satisfy his hunger. Did he really get the pie? Chapter 1783. Actually, it wasn't. In fact, Yu Hui's current body couldn't withstand the spirit power of a level 9 great spiritual master. The burning spirit power tore at his tendons and veins. Did he think that everything would be over after the effects of the medicine wore off? There were two possible outcomes for him after the effects of this powerful cultivation enhancing medicine wore off. First, his veins would be damaged by the spirit power. If he didn't have the help of a skilled doctor, he would be crippled for the rest of his life. He wouldn't even be able to preserve his spirit veins. Second, if he couldn't control the spirit power in his body during the process of increasing his cultivation, it could cause his spirit power to go haywire and cause his body to explode. However, would Arbor tell him all of this? What a joke. Rather than wasting her breath on this random person, she might as well kill him first. Arbor, Yu Hui asked sternly, I want you to answer me immediately. What did you mean by what you said just now? Whoosh. A purple flame rapidly crept over like a blooming violet orchid. It abruptly spread out from Xiao Mu's feet and swept toward Yu Hui. That purple color was too enchanting and beautiful. In an instant, it almost blinded everyone's eyes. Qi Xuanxuan's anxious heart relaxed a little. She clicked her tongue and said, Jojo always is good things. This ferrule doesn't look like a normal spirit weapon. From the looks of it, this ferrule seems to be a 15th grade spiritual weapon. However, Duanmu Qing glanced at it and said calmly, it should be able to continue forging and leveling up. The person who made it should be a divine weapon master. It looks like a growth-type spirit weapon. Qi Xianxian was slightly speechless. So powerful that I don't have to worry. Little Fatty patted his chest and smiled. Jojo has the help of a divine weapon and Fire Phoenix and the other two. She'll definitely win. Duanmu Qing nodded slightly. There was no doubt about Jojo's strength. He wasn't worried that she wouldn't be able to defeat Yu Hui, but he didn't know why his heart was in a mess. His eyelids were twitching as if something bad was about to happen. Seeing that Duanmu Qing was no longer speaking, everyone turned their attention to the small arena. On the small arena, the purple flames from Arbor's ferrule had already formed a purple screen in front of Yu Hui. Yu Hui unwillingly retreated a few steps and glared at Xiao Mu with a vicious glint in his eyes. Huh, is that all you've got? At the same time, Yu Hui's hands formed two circles of spiritual power and slammed into the small ring. Layer after layer of floor tiles flipped out and lined up in a row. Together, they flew towards Arbor like a tidal wave. Xiao Mu sneered, and with a swipe of her hand, defensive talismans inscribed with ebony appeared beside her. With a tap of her toes, Xiao Mu had already floated far away. Yu Hui immediately chased after him, only to see Arbor's feet move. He had already leaped onto the high roof of the battle hall, looking down coldly from above. With a flip of her hand, several explosion talismans appeared in her hand. Arbor's eyes narrowed. She thought mockingly, a level 9 great spirit master. I wonder if you can withstand the fierce attack of my 10 explosion talismans. In the blink of an eye, several streaks of light flew towards Yu Hui. Ha ha ha, you want to subdue me with this? I'll write again in the morning. I'll give you 8 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 1784. Arbor coldly looked at the man who was laughing wildly, and a trace of mockery flashed in her eyes. Arrogant. The 10 explosion talismans had already reached Yu Hui's side in a flash. Suddenly, they vibrated and exploded. One after another, the entire small ring in the center exploded into pieces. Arbor's figure soared into the air. Yu Hui followed closely behind. He jumped up in the sea of flames and fire, and his figure rose higher. Seeing that he was about to fly out of the sea of fire, Arbor coldly looked at him. Her white hand flew up, and another 30 explosion talismans were thrown down without hesitation. Following that, the fire talismans and the earth talismans attacked Yu Hui as if they were free. This round of burning talismans left everyone dumbfounded. Seeing is believing, hearing is false. Probably no one would believe this kind of thing, right? A 14 or 15-year-old girl using expensive 5-spirit talismans to throw people all over the place. Yu Hui, who was struggling to get up in the sea of fire, was pressed down by the stones thrown down by the earth talismans and fell into the sea of fire. Under the wall of fire, the fire rose up more than 10 meters high. The small ring in the center had been completely destroyed. Arbor was floating in the air, and Yu Hui's figure fell on the first floor of the ring. Yu Hui could only use his spiritual power to protect his body. His wooden vines were burned to ashes by the flames as soon as they came out of the raging fire. Yu Hui also didn't understand why his cultivation was so much higher than Arbor's, but his wood spiritual power was suppressed by Arbor's fire talismans and earth talismans. He was already a very outstanding genius in the whole family. At this age, he had already broken through to the 3rd level of spiritual master and had the 6th level of wood spiritual power. Yu Hui's eyes moved slightly, and he couldn't help but understand. It must be that the person who made the 5-spirit talismans had a much higher level of spiritual power than him. But so what? That little girl could throw out 10 or 20 talismans. Could she throw out 100, 200, or 300 talismans? There would always be a time when the talismans would be exhausted, and once they were exhausted, he would be able to wait a minute. Yu Hui's neck stiffly turned around to look at the bloodfire phoenix that had suddenly pounced behind him. He didn't even have time to cry out. A blood-red flame instantly sprayed onto his face. Roar! Ouch! Yu Hui felt an intense, burning pain in his eyes, and he fell to the ground. As he fell into the sea of fire, he could barely feel the burning pain from his limbs and body. All his senses were focused on his face. Not to mention the burning pain on his face, his eyes seemed to have been burned by the fire, and he couldn't even open them. No, his eyes. Covering his face, Yu Hui rolled back and forth in the disaster and howled. He secretly spread out his telegnosis ability and felt Arbor's figure landing on the ground. This little bastard actually dared to destroy his eyes. He wanted her to die without a burial ground. Roar! After an angry roar, Yu Hui struggled to get up. The endless wood spiritual power in his hands turned into countless vines and branches, and he chased after Arbor. Arbor didn't even look at him. One of his hands formed a glittering ice sword, and he expressionlessly slashed at the wooden vines in front of him. A mere 6th level wood spiritual power dared to show off in front of her. Chapter 1785. Where did this person get his courage and courage from? Arbor's eyes sharpened, and the ice sword in her hand slashed down, chopping off several wooden vines that were darting toward her. At the same time, Yu Hui had already pounced in front of her. He suddenly took out a spiritual energy ball, and with a strange smile, he threw it at Arbor's face. Umph! Arbor's eyes did not waver. She waved her hand to set up defensive talismans in front of her, and at the same time, she quickly flew toward the sky. Boom! After a loud noise, everyone in the arena was basically in a petrified state. Were they having competition, or were they tearing down a house? The power of the spiritual energy ball's explosion was very great. Because it chased after Arbor and exploded, the force directly broke through the roof. A large cave appeared at the top, and from time to time, soil rustled and fell down. Young Master Ding, who had heard the news, stared at Yu Hui with a very ugly expression and said angrily, "What are you all standing there for? Go take that guy down." At this time, Yu Hui, who had already decided to go all out, took out another spiritual energy ball and threw it at young Master Ding, who was sitting in front of the seats. In the middle of the banquet, the onlookers immediately burst into an uproar. Everyone screamed and jumped up from their chairs. Their faces were pale as they crawled back. The seats were tightly packed together. If the damn ball of spiritual energy were to explode, it would be a huge loss for them. At the very least, thousands of people in the audience would die. Young Master Ding was not a kind person, and he did not have to save these people for the sake of righteousness. However, this thing flew toward him. Did he deserve to be the target of this spiritual energy ball? Moreover, if this big accident happened in the underground arena, it would definitely attract the attention of the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture master, and it would also affect his business in various places. How could he let it explode? Young Master Ding's handsome face was cold. He suddenly flicked his sleeve and released a wave of wood spiritual energy, and the winding wooden vines instantly wrapped around the spiritual energy ball. In the blink of an eye, the spiritual energy ball was wrapped in layers of vines. The hearts of the people behind him, which had been hanging high in the air, relaxed slightly. Pairs of eyes stared nervously at the sphere that was wrapped in vines and hung high in the air. With a wave of young Master Ding's sleeve, the ball flew backward. After a loud bang, the small arena exploded. The entire ground shook as if it were about to collapse. That was because when Arbor had used the explosion talisman, the defensive layer of the entire arena had been destroyed by her. Now that Yu Hui had thrown out 2 more balls of spiritual energy, the pressure vortex directly broke through the layer of soil above, causing the entire underground fighting ground to tremble violently. Ding Yun's expression was cold and indifferent as he raised his eyes to look towards the direction of the small arena that was completely empty, and his entire handsome face was covered in a layer of frost with a whoosh. That idiot Yu Hui took Jojo away. Come with me immediately. You must find Miss Qiao. Yes. Tang Chung received the order and immediately began to gather all the people in the arena, following closely behind Ding Yun. Ding Yun's cold gaze swept towards Family Head Yu behind him. That gaze was so cold that Family Head Yu could not help but shiver slightly. Family Yu. Slaughter the entire family. Kill without mercy. Ding Yun's gaze was without any warmth. Chapter 1786. How dare the idiots of the Yu family take Jojo away in front of him? What did they take the Qian Luo underground fighting arena for? Did they think that anyone could cause trouble here? Since they poked the hornet's nest, they had to bear the consequences. The Yu family? Find them. Die. Yes. Master Yu's pupil shrank. He jumped up and was about to say something when he saw a swarm of fighting arena guards swarming towards him. Everyone was stunned and then hurriedly retreated to the sides, fearing that they would be caught in the crossfire. The underground fighting arena was a complete mess. Putting aside the fact that young Sir Ding was looking for trouble with the Yu clan in anger, after Qiao Mu followed Yu Hui out of the hole, the two people continued exchanging hundreds of moves in the gap between the soil and the roof. Because the gap was very narrow and short, the tall and strong Yu Hui was very aggrieved. Arbor was very agile and moved very quickly. In a few moves, he opened many small wounds on Yu Hui's body. As the two of them fought, they broke through the soil layer and rushed out. After a few more moves, Yu Hui became anxious, and his face became more and more gloomy. Do you feel that the spiritual power in your body is gradually disappearing like a sea of sand? Arbor's cold voice, like a demon from hell, suddenly sounded in his ears. Shut up, Yu Hui roared. What do you want to say? I don't want to hear anything. Arbor glanced at him coldly. You don't want to hear it, but I want to tell you. You will be in this situation for about half an hour. After that, most of the spiritual power in your body will dissipate without a trace. Why? The effect of the medicine will wear off. Idiot, you don't even know this. How dare you take the medicine casually? Did you think that it was so easy to take a pill that could increase one's cultivation by 3 times? Didn't you have to bear the consequences after taking it? An idiot is an idiot. It's useless to talk to him. Yu Hui's eyes were red and his face was full of disbelief. He stared at Arbor and said sternly, You lied to me. Arbor didn't say anything. Instead, he took advantage of Yu Hui's confusion and slashed his ice sword twice on his shoulder. Yu covered his shoulder and took a few steps back. He glared at Arbor angrily and said, Are you deliberately saying these words to mess with me? Arbor's cold eyes fell on him. You have about 15 minutes left. Damn it. Yu Hui furiously sent out streams of wood spiritual energy towards Arbor. The intertwining vines danced in the air, twisting into a ball and rapidly wrapping around Arbor. A deathbed struggle. Xiao Mu's expression turned severe, and she summoned the startled swan dagger from her conscious. She swiftly chopped down several hundred to 1,000 vines in a tangled mess. She then used her spiritual conscious to guide the startled swan dagger towards Yu Hui's neck. The power that is not yours is not yours. So what if you get it for a short while? At that time, he would still have to spit it all out. Moreover, with Yu Hui's current condition, once the surging energy receded from his body, he would become a cripple in the future. Looking at his current frenzied and irrational appearance, it was likely that his spirit veins had already begun to break. It was just that he was too stupid to notice it. Joe! Would? Yu Hui dodged the menacing, startled swan dagger with red eyes. However, the spiritual power emitted by the sharp blade had already drawn a shallow red line on his neck. Chapter 1787. Astonishingly fast. Yu Hui's eyes narrowed slightly. Arbor threw out several dozen talismans, forming a defensive wall in front of her. The slender figure leapt forward, quickly reaching out to catch the startled swan dagger, and then the dagger once again slashed towards Yu Hui's neck. Yu Hui fell backwards, his body sticking close to the ground as he quickly rolled backwards to avoid it. When he raised his head in a sorry state, his long hair was draped over his face, his entire face was ashen, and his lips were an abnormal vermilion color. Just as Yu Hui was about to curse out loud, he suddenly reached out and pressed his chest. He felt as if his veins were being stirred and torn apart by something. He let out a miserable howl and fell to the ground with a thud. What kind of person was Arbor? Would she let go of such a great opportunity to kill Yu Hui? But seeing her fly up, her eyes flashed slightly, and the startled swan dagger flew towards Yu Hui with a terrifying spiritual power. Yu Hui, who was rolling on the ground in pain, didn't pay attention for a moment, and the startled swan dagger directly opened a wound on his face. He screamed and reached out to cover his face, rolling back and forth, cursing without thinking. Arbor, you slut! Ah! The startled swan dagger cut off a thin piece of flesh from his face. Yu Hui's cursing was stopped in his throat by the pain on his face, and his entire body was in so much pain that he was rolling on the ground in a sorry state. The medicine's effect has worn off. How does it feel? Arbor said coldly, her eyes clearly without any emotion, looking at him with eyes full of disgust, as if she was looking at something dirty. Speak. Who sent you to kill me? She was originally an intelligent and quick-witted girl. With Yu Hui's attitude, if she still couldn't guess by now that Yu Hui was ordered by someone, then she was really stupid. Although the trash pill in Yu Hui's hand wasn't anything good, it was definitely not something that the current Shuntian Hall's pharmacist could refine. Yu Hui held his head, rolling back and forth twice, and then reluctantly raised his head to look at the cold-faced girl in front of him. Suddenly, a strange smile appeared on his face. Xiao Mu was completely startled, and she only felt a chill run down her back. An inexplicable sense of crisis mixed with an intuition of impending danger assaulted her from behind. Arbor didn't say anything and moved his feet. With a backhand, he sent a series of meteor scatter towards the back. A ghastly howl came from behind. As the wind blew, a rotting figure suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. It was a corpse puppet. Moreover, it seemed to be something that far surpassed a mid-level zombie. His speed was already comparable to a level 10 great spiritual master, and the power of his slash was also very strong. The wind generated by the slash made Arbor's little face hurt slightly. Moreover, this undead puppet had been hiding in the dark all this time. It knew how to detect the best time to launch a sneak attack. It could be said that this was a very smart, undead puppet. Arbor had never seen or heard of such a thing before. Ha 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 ha! Insolent laughter came from Yu Hui's mouth. He barely managed to lift himself up and staggered to his feet. His eyes contained a venomous glint as he stared fixedly at Xiao Mu and shrieked with laughter. Little brat, you think you've won for sure? Don't you know that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind? Ha ha ha! He hated this girl in front of him the most. That hateful, paralyzed face. It was clearly such a dangerous time, but she wasn't the least bit moved. Chapter 1788. Let me tell you, even if I'm destined to die here today, you definitely won't survive. After saying that, he took out a bamboo whistle and blew hard into it. The advanced level zombie behind Xiao Mu immediately moved agitatedly, abruptly stretching out a pair of rotting arms to hug Xiao Mu. Ha ha ha! Yu Hui's eyes flashed with malice. His whole body trembled as he screamed angrily, "Go to hell! Go to hell!" The zombie straightened its back. Its figure appeared very tall, taller than Arbor by a head. Seeing the pair of rotting arms encircling her, Xiao Mu could even see the string of rotting flesh and disgusting worms hanging from the arms. However, her eyes remained unmoved. Her small face was still expressionless. She raised her hand expressionlessly and shot 3 black gold arrows at the zombie. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 arrows were shot simultaneously. 2 of the arrowheads pierced the zombie's arms, while the other pierced the zombie's leg. However, this didn't stop the zombie from moving towards her at all. Seeing that the zombie's claws were about to grab her shoulder, Arbor picked up a washboard and smashed it at the rotting hand. At most, after smashing the zombie, she didn't care about the washboard. It was really too disgusting. The zombie's claws didn't break after being smashed by the spirit weapon. This was already within Arbor's expectations. After all, the zombie in front of her was comparable to a level 10 Great Spirit Master. Unlike that 3-legged cat Yu Hui, who is still so weak even after taking medicine and forcefully becoming a level 9 Spirit Master. Arbor coldly glanced at it and hit the zombie with the washboard again. Although the zombie wasn't seriously injured, it was pushed back a few inches by the collision of the 2 spiritual forces and took a few steps back. The spiritual water flowing in Arbor's hand instantly turned into an ice sword. Just as she picked up the sword and was about to pounce on the zombie, Arbor's expression suddenly changed. She felt the spiritual power surging in her body continuously rise. This feeling, it seemed like she was about to advance. Damn it! Previously, when she saw that little fatty, Qi Xian, and the others had all improved, she was definitely faking it if she said that she was not worried. He had been looking forward to advancing to the spirit realm for so many days, but who would have thought that she would advance at such a critical moment? If this wasn't cheating, then what was? Arbor frowned slightly, and his small hands subconsciously clenched into fists. Chio, pull me into Paradise Planet immediately. She couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with Yu Hui. She would fight with them after she leveled up. However, she soon discovered that her mental communication with Chio had failed. Her face darkened. She immediately understood the reason for her failure. This breakthrough was a huge leap from the profound realm to the soul realm. As he advanced, the entire star field would change as well. All of the profound domains, including Paradise Planet, would probably be upgraded to spirit domains. Therefore, it was possible that he had suddenly cut off his connection with the star field. However, all of this happened so suddenly that she was caught off guard. Now, she felt that something was wrong. He raised his hand and shot an arrow. After forcing the high-level zombie to take 2 steps back, Arbor turned his head and decisively dashed into the distance. Yui raised his bamboo whistle and blew it twice. He immediately screamed, "Chase!" He covered his face and stumbled forward. As soon as he raised his eyes, he saw the zombie fly past him at an extremely fast speed. There was still 3 chapters left. It would probably be 11 o'clock. Chapter 1789. Yu Hui's hair was disheveled as he chased after the high-level zombie like a madman. He followed Arbor as fast as he could. Suddenly, a blazing blood phoenix swooped down from the sky. One of Yu Hui's eyes was severely burned and could only be half squinted. Although the other eye could barely see, it still felt blurry. At this time, his body instinctively felt that there was danger approaching. He hurriedly rolled on the ground and instantly opened a defensive barrier. The blazing blood phoenix's claw had already landed on his back. The piercing and burning pain made him scream uncontrollably. Hui laid down on the ground and subconsciously covered his head with his hands. He felt the fire phoenix chasing after him. It angrily spat out several flames, and on the spot, he was covered in flames. He kept rolling back and forth on the ground, patting away the raging flames on his body. Hui was secretly shocked. He thought that he was going to die. Who would have thought that the blazing blood phoenix didn't take advantage of the opportunity to chase after him and take his life? Instead, it let out a shrill cry and flew out from the top of his head, spewing out several tumbling waves of fire towards the high-level corpse puppet. Obviously, Arbor was in danger. The phoenix didn't have time to care about him, and hurriedly ran to save its little master. Hui heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Suddenly, he felt as if someone had slapped him hard in the stomach. Before he could even gasp for breath, he found that his body had been swept away like a rag. Hui screamed. When he caught his breath, he found that he was almost killed on the spot by a fat squirrel's tail. At this time, he was hanging on a tree, dying. His eyes were blurry as he stared at Arbor, who was fighting the high-level zombie not far away. Kill her, kill her, kill her. Hui silently prayed with grievance. On the other side, how could Arbor dare to let Chirps use its tail to hit the zombie? She didn't want their claws to touch the zombie at all. There were too many uncertain factors. Who knew if Chirps and the others would also turn into zombies if they were infected with the zombie poison in its body? Arbor took precautions and hurriedly put the fat squirrel and the snow leopard into his spirit beast space for the time being. As for the Bloodblaze Phoenix, it could avoid danger as long as it didn't use its claws to tear apart that disgusting high-level zombie. Actually, if he could use Paradise Planet now, he could just release the golem treasure to deal with them first. In any case, mechanical puppets were not made of real flesh and blood, so they did not have to worry about being scratched by zombie puppets. Naturally, they did not have to worry so much. In this situation, Arbor was in a passive position. Arbor didn't want to deal with this high-level zombie any longer. Right now, the most important thing for her was to leave this place and find a quiet environment to advance her cultivation. The blazing blood fire phoenix was telepathically connected to her, so it naturally knew why its little master was calling for it. He swooped down towards her. Arbor also stood on his tiptoes and lightly tapped the ground. He had just flown a few feet when he wanted to jump onto the phoenix's back. The high-level corpse puppet let out a fierce roar. Arbor's eyes narrowed. She suddenly realized that the high-level zombie had probably sensed her intention to run away. This zombie probably didn't have a human appearance, but its way of thinking was perfectly close to a human's. This thought merely flashed through Xiao Mu's mind, and she had already leaped onto the Bloodfire Phoenix's back. The human and beast were just about to leave when they suddenly heard a roar from the ground. Chapter 1790. That advanced-level zombie soared up from an extremely strange and tricky angle and suddenly dashed in front of Xiao Mu while suspended in midair. Although he was only in the middle of the infant stage, his attack and speed were not comparable to this high-level corpse puppet. Just as the high-level corpse puppet rushed to Arbor's side, the phoenix flapped its wings and dodged to the side with Arbor on its back. At this time, it turned around and flew away. Ayo! The high-level corpse puppet's unwilling roar came from behind. For some reason, Xiao Mu felt a bit flustered, and she reflexively turned around to look. She saw the high-level zombie leap in the air and arrive behind Xiao Mu in 2 leaps. Arbor did not hesitate to throw a few ice blades at it. Suddenly, she felt a slight chill in her hands. She couldn't help but feel bad. This cold Een aura was very similar to the Een power in the mysterious Een charm. This corpse puppet could use the Een power to attack her. Thinking of this, she quickly opened a speed talisman and a strength talisman, threw them on the back of the Bloodfire Phoenix, and said in a deep voice, "Let's go." As soon as the words fell, she felt a strong wind coming from behind. Arbor quickly turned her head and saw that the 2 arms of the corpse puppet were all separated from the body and had come to the back of her head. Cold sweat came out her heart. Arbor shot 2 arrows to stop the 2 severed arms from continuing to fly in front of her. But before she could breathe a sigh of relief, she saw the 10 fingers of the pair of rotten hands fly together, like sharp hidden weapons shooting straight at her face. This attack was simply impossible to guard against. Arbor didn't realize that the high-level corpse puppet could separate its limbs from its body and suffer loss. At this moment, seeing the 10 fingers flying towards him, he hurriedly wrapped himself in a round eggshell defensive barrier. His heart slightly alarmed, he threw out a concealed weapon, blocking the 10 fingers outside of his body. Feeling a sudden pain on her arm, Arbor looked down in disbelief. She saw a tiny, palm-sized zombie bird hanging from her left forearm. Although she didn't feel much pain when it bit her forearm, Xiaomu only felt a chill creeping up from the bottom of her heart. Her eyes widened in an instant. She was tricked. She was tricked by a high-level corpse puppet. Just now, the corpse puppet had chased after her ferociously, and its limbs had separated from its body to attack her. Everything was a smokescreen to cover the little corpse bird's approach. Obviously, when all her attention was on the high-level zombie puppet, the corpse bird had sneaked into her defensive barrier without anyone noticing. This high-level corpse puppet with an IQ comparable to a human's didn't make a move, but once it made a move, it must complete the task of killing Arbor. Arbor's eyes became a little dazed for a moment, and her mind was in a mess. However, her movements were not slow. First, she tore off the corpse bird from her arm. Then, 5 cold sharp awls appeared on her 5 fingers and pierced into the corpse bird's small head. She mercilessly pierced the corpse bird's head and body over and over again until it was riddled with holes and broken into pieces. Then, with a squeeze of her hand, she burned the corpse bird that dared to harm her body into ashes. Arbor's eyes were filled with a strong hatred and murderous intent. She raised her head and looked directly at the high-level corpse puppet. Her heart was filled with anger and her eyes were cold. Chapter 1791. She still had a lot of things to do. She hadn't fulfilled her promise to her mother, and she hadn't even seen her lotus. Was she going to die like this? She looked down at the small bite wound on her forearm. At this time, the wound had already been healed by her body, and there was no trace of it at all. Arbor couldn't help but feel a little confused, but she was still worried. Although the wound on the surface had disappeared, the corpse poison might have already entered her body. After taking a few elixirs, Arbor jumped down from the back of the Bloodfire Phoenix. She was afraid of being scratched before, so she was a little restrained. Now that she had been bitten, what was there to be afraid of? Arbor's heart was boiling with anger. As if feeling her emotions, the high-level corpse puppet shrank back a little and then rushed up again. Arbor looked at the corpse puppet's rotten arm and fingers that had returned to their original state and clenched her fists hard. The corpse puppet suddenly opened its hands, and countless little corpse birds flew out from under its armpits, fluttering toward Arbor. Arbor raised her sleeve to cover half of her face and suddenly heard a familiar voice, "Jojo." A shadow suddenly appeared beside her and blocked her way without saying a word. A dark flame silently burned on the ground. Emolien. Arbor's watery eyes turned red in an instant. It was fine if she didn't see him, but when she suddenly saw him, even if it was just a faint shadow, she could feel that her heart was overflowing with thoughts of him. Emolien's shadow didn't seem to be able to say much, and he just turned his head and looked at her deeply. With a wave of his hand, the sacred fire burned the ground and rose up. In just a moment, the group of little corpse birds were all burned to ashes. Then the black fire turned into a long black sword, and in a breath, it went straight through the head of the high-level corpse puppet. Ding-dang, a light sound was heard. A light silver crystal core fell out of the high-level zombie's head. The color was very pure, unlike the disgusting zombie's appearance. Emolien turned around and opened her arms to hug her. "Jojo, I was worried about you. I'll be back soon." The faint word "come" turned into a final note, disappearing into the air. His figure passed through her body, like a gentle breeze brushing past her cheeks. The little guy raised a pair of small arms and made a gesture of wanting to hug him. Then his shadow dissipated. It was one thing to know that he was thousands of miles away from him, and that a wisp of his divine sense couldn't last for too long. But it was another thing to see him dissipate in less than a minute. Xiao Mu's small face scrunched up in grievance, and she pitifully muttered, Yin, you might not be able to see me again in the future. Mistress. Qiuqiu's voice rang in her ears like the sound of nature. Then she felt her body become light, and she was pulled into Paradise Planet. On the other side, Yu Hui, who was lying on a tree trunk and didn't dare to disturb Yin's shadow, breathed a sigh of relief. Then he suddenly saw Arbor's figure disappear. There seemed to be a trace of the mystic domain's aura flowing in the air. Although Yu Hui was at his last breath, he was so excited that his whole body started to tremble. It's the mystic domain. It's the aura of the mystic domain. That little girl has a secret. Don't worry. The author is close. Chapter 1792. Ha! He had inadvertently learned that the little girl had such a big secret. Yu Hui half squinted his blurry eyes and tried to climb down from the tree trunk. He could already imagine that as long as this news spread out, that damned stinky girl would be hunted down by the entire Shantian mansion. Her ending would be miserable. Ha ha! Cough, cough, cough. Yu Hui moved his battered body and slid down the tree inch by inch. Suddenly, he heard the cry of a phoenix and his heart shrank. He barely managed to turn the defensive ring in his hand. Just as he activated the defensive barrier, he felt a heat wave rush toward him and bombarded his body. The defensive barrier was completely shattered. Yu Hui fell down from the tree and landed on the ground with his limbs facing the sky. A cough, cough. Yu Hui felt that his internal organs were almost overturned by the impact. He spat out a mouthful of blood. His vision was blurred, and he couldn't see anything clearly. In a daze, he seemed to feel something flying down from the sky. If Yu Hui could see at this moment, he would definitely see the sky filled with red clouds and flames shooting towards him like bullets of fire. He propped up his battered body, and his eyes flashed with hatred. Inch by inch, he tried to climb out of the firewall. Arbor, that damn girl, has the mysterious domain. Arbor has the mysterious domain. Even if this secret couldn't be told to the world, he had to tell his father first. He rummaged through his inner world for the communication jade talisman. Just as he took it out, he heard a soft, buzzing sound in the air. Suddenly, he felt a chill on his neck. He lowered his head in shock and saw a flying dagger open a bloody hole in his neck. It came out from the back of his neck. Cough, cough, cough. Yu Hui subconsciously wanted to reach out and press his bleeding throat. He tried to raise his head and see the blurry figure in front of him. Xiao, Arbor, it's Arbor. She actually came back. She probably remembered that there was still a fly like him that had not been dealt with yet. Good, what a ruthless method. She killed people without blinking, and Yu Hui died with a grudge in his heart. He collapsed to the ground, unable to get up again. The startled swan dagger pierced 7 to 8 bloody holes in Yu Hui's body before returning to Arbor's hand. Looking at the shiny dagger again, there was not a single trace of blood left on it. It was abnormally clean and beautiful. Xiao Mu's small face was pale as she pursed her lips. She put away that silver crystal core that had fallen to the ground and coldly retracted her gaze as she gazed at Yu Hui, who had turned into ashes under the roasting of the phoenix flames. Let's go. Arbor recalled the blazing blood-fiery phoenix and was once again brought into Paradise Planet by Little Tree. This time, she only felt the surging spiritual energy in her body run amok, and she could no longer control herself and spat out a mouthful of blood. He should have immediately found a quiet place to meditate and gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth when he sensed that he was about to ascend to the spirit realm. With such a delay, he didn't know if there would be any repercussions for Arbor. At this time, Paradise Planet was also very unstable. The scenery in front of him looked distorted and blurry. Space seemed to be distorted and slowly shattered. Master, don't worry. Paradise Planet has been transformed into a spirit realm along with you. You should swallow this first. As he spoke, a small green and furry fruit fell into Arbor's hand. Chapter 1793. Arbor reached out to hold the fruit, and looked around. "Little ball, where are you?" Little ball didn't make a sound, but the little water baby stumbled over to her leg in a bumpy space. It reached out two transparent little hands and hugged the corner of Arbor's skirt, urging, Master Silver, hurry up and eat it." Arbor also knew that her situation was very bad. Her arm was bitten by a high-level corpse bird, and if nothing unexpected happened, she would turn into a corpse in less than a quarter of an hour. But now she could clearly feel that there seemed to be an invisible force in her body that was suppressing the corpse poison. Although she was a little confused, Arbor didn't have time to think too much about it. Under the little water's urging, she hurriedly swallowed the fruit. Where did this fruit come from? Arbor hurriedly asked, "Where's Little Ball? Why didn't it come out to see me?" The little water baby immediately lowered its head, sobbing and not daring to answer. "Where's Little Ball?" Arbor had a bad premonition in her heart. She hurriedly bent down and grabbed the little water baby, asking with a serious expression, "Hurry up and tell me the truth." "Why, just now, Master was bitten by that thing." Little Ball asked Little Ball and me to help accelerate its growth. Let it blossom and bear fruit quickly. Arbor's heart thumped fiercely. And then, this one, is it a holy fruit? She remembered that Little Ball once told her that the little tree could blossom and bear fruit, and the holy fruit it bore could at least make her cultivation advance by leaps and bounds by 2 levels. So she had always thought that Little Ball's fruit was at most used for advancement. But it turned out that it could get rid of the corpse poison. Then where's Little Ball? Arbor was anxious, and her voice couldn't help but become more severe. Little Ball was still in the late stage of its infancy. If it was forcefully accelerated, it definitely wouldn't have any benefits. The little water baby was frightened by Arbor, crying out loud. Little Ball fainted. Little Ball is taking care of it." Arbor's eyes turned red, and she struggled to use her inner vision to look at Little Ball. The little water child hurriedly hugged her and said, Master, you should advance first. If you continue like this, the spiritual energy in your body will explode." "No, I want to see Chocho first," Arbor said, clenching his fists. Ever since she had been reborn, Chocho had always taken care of her, helped her, and given her too much. How could she watch it be in danger? "Master," the little water baby hugged her and cried, "Master, your skin is bleeding. You have to block off your 5 senses immediately and enter secluded cultivation. Master, you can't delay any longer." How could Arbor still listen to the water child's words at this time? She anxiously sank into her inner vision. He saw that the small tree in his dantian was indeed luxuriant. Although it was not a towering tree, at least it had been forcibly upgraded to the late stage of growth compared to its appearance in the late stage of infancy. It had been upgraded by a whole stage. However, Little Ball's current situation was very bad. Its roots were rapidly withering, and its leaves were also slowly curling up and falling. Little Ball was wrapped around Little Ball's roots, nourishing and nurturing it. However, looking at its constantly shrinking appearance, it was obvious that the late-stage Little Ball was completely unable to keep up with the shrinking of the small tree. "Little Ball, how can I help you? How can I help you?" Arbor's eyes immediately reddened, and tears flowed out of her eyes uncontrollably. Chapter 1794. Looking at Chocho, who looked like it was about to die, Arbor's heart ached, and she panicked. It was as if a yellowed and ancient scene had floated past her eyes. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who hugged half a dead tree and floated in the void, as if she had been drifting for countless years. Just like that, each person and one piece of dead tree, the two of them relied on each other as companions. Chocho. In the blink of an eye, the sapling shrunk back to its original size. Moreover, it looked even worse than when they first met. Arbor was at a loss and said in panic, "Chocho, wait here. I'll go to the frigid pool to find you a piece of black spirit jade. You'll definitely recover after you absorb it." Master, the little water child was about to go crazy. It watched as its little master stumbled and ran through the twisted paradise planet, heading for the frigid pool behind the peach orchard slope. Master, When the little water child stumbled and crawled to the frigid pool, it saw that its little master had already jumped in without a care for anything else. In a hurry, the little water child also hurriedly jumped into the frigid pool, sliding its little hands and feet with all its might to get closer to its master. Its little master's paddling speed was too fast. As soon as she entered the water, she was like a fish that could breathe, swimming freely in the pool. Even the innate holy water, which was able to merge with any water in the world, was a little surprised. This kind of swimming speed was not like that of a normal human. Arbor shot to the bottom of the frigid pool, and at this time, a red figure also desperately paddled to her side. Not here. Arbor blankly turned to look at the newcomer. The youth in front of her was about 14 or 15 years old. There was a fire mark between his eyebrows, and his bright red short hair was very eye-catching. Fire? Yes. As long as it was a divine beast, it could transform, not to mention a holy beast like the Bloodblaze Phoenix. It was just that under normal circumstances, beasts did not like to transform into human form. In human form, their strength and speed could not be compared to their beast form. Come with me. It's here. The Bloodblaze Phoenix had relied on swallowing the black spirit jade at the bottom of the frigid pool to break out of its eggshell, so he naturally knew the location of the black spirit jade. Right now, Xiaomu hated herself for slacking off earlier. If he had come to the bottom of the pond earlier to ascertain the location of the profound spirit jade, he wouldn't have had to go through the trouble of diving to the bottom of the pond. He would have been able to use his spiritual sense to obtain it. Master, the Bloodfire Phoenix turned around to look at her, only to realize that Arbor had already swum to its side. The Bloodblaze Phoenix couldn't help but feel a little surprised. When the little master was paddling, there was no sound at all. It was as if the little master had completely merged with the cold pond. Like a fish in water, he was extremely fast. There are many profound spirit jades buried under the fine sand at the bottom of this lake. Arbor hurriedly swam down and pushed aside the layer of white sand below. Sure enough, he saw a lot of black spirit jade. Arbor threw more than half of the profound spirit jade into his inner world, then turned around and swam towards the surface of the cold pond. Master, there's actually a secret door hidden under the profound spirit jade. The Bloodblaze Phoenix couldn't help but sigh when he saw that she was completely ignoring him and only focused on swimming towards the cold pond. At this time, no matter what he said to his little master, she wouldn't be able to hear him. Right now, she was completely focused on Little Ball. But the Bloodblaze Phoenix swam forward, his gaze landing on the drops of blood seeping out of her arm. He inwardly frowned. Chapter 1795. Master's body can't hold on any longer. Her current situation is not much better than the saplings. She needs to advance immediately and not suppress it. After Arbor left the cold pond, she immediately summoned a large pile of black spirit jade. She took a piece and closed her eyes to absorb it. Now that the sapling was unconscious, she could only absorb the energy in its place. She hoped that she could help it. The little water child anxiously paced around her feet. It turned back and roared at the Bloodfire Phoenix. You should persuade Master. Master's body is filled with large amounts of spirit energy, but she is suppressing it and not advancing. Instead, she is absorbing the energy of the black spirit jade. Does she want me to explode and die? The Bloodfire Phoenix frowned and clenched her fists. While she was hesitating, she suddenly saw a furry tail emerge from Arbor's back and slap her neck. Miss Xiao, who was already at the end of her rope, was caught off guard and fainted on the spot. The little water child angrily cursed, Damn Chirpy, what are you doing? The little fat squirrel stretched out 2 claws and picked up Arbor's body before throwing her onto the snow leopard's back. Quickly bring her to the place with the densest spirit energy. With a whoosh, the snow leopard dashed forward with Xiao Mu on its back. Because the space was distorted, the snow leopard had a hard time running. It had to avoid the spirit energy vortexes from time to time. Soon, the snow leopard placed Arbor under the longevity tree. The spirit energy around the longevity tree was the densest. That tree was pulled by the power of time and space. but it did not fall. It was still blooming with colorful longevity flowers. Chirpy, the little water child, was about to die from anxiousness. It pounced over to stop the little fat squirrel. Chirpy stretched out its two tails and almost sent it flying. Do you still not understand? The reason why the wounds on Master's body disappeared on their own is because there is a strange recovery energy in her body. In other words, even if she is unconscious, her body will automatically heal her and help her advance in her sleep. This was because this power of recovery would only develop in the direction that was best for the little master. For example, now that Arbor had fallen asleep, the spirit energy in her body that was about to explode had spontaneously flowed towards her Dantian's mystic domain. The changes here may not be due to the spatial distortions caused by profound domain's advancement to spirit domain. Chochio's little furry face was full of seriousness. It's because Master's Dantian star field is undergoing an intense transformation. Isn't he at the spirit ascension tier? No, it's not just because of the spirit ascension tier. Their little master really made them worry. Even she herself was in a daze. She probably didn't know what was going on at all. So, knocking out his troublesome little master was the best choice, wasn't it? She wondered if Chochio had thought about how it would kill the little master when it woke up when it knocked out its master. Come, place these profound spirit jades beside Master. Along with the influx of spirit chi, the profound spirit chi within the profound spirit jade would also be drawn into Little Master's body. In this way, it should be able to supplement Chochio's weak little body. As Xiao Mu was unconscious, she was completely unaware that all of the spiritual energy that had just formed inside Paradise Planet was endlessly gushing into her body. Her breathing was very steady. Chapter 1796. She lay there motionless, but her face was slightly rosy, as if she had fallen asleep. A group of beasts of all sizes consciously sat in a circle around her, looking at her worriedly and looking at each other in dismay. It's already been 10 days. Will the self-recovery you mentioned work? Chochio risked his life to bear the holy fruit. It should make Master fine. The group of little beasts muttered, but in fact, they felt very uncertain in the bottom of their hearts. If Master was fine, she wouldn't have taken so long to wake up. In fact, the construction of the entire Paradise Star Spirit Domain had been completed 3 days ago. And a day ago, Master's body had stopped absorbing spiritual energy. The rich spiritual energy in Paradise Star had basically been completely absorbed by Master. If she wanted to recover, it wouldn't be completely recovered in a day or two. They originally thought that after the construction of Paradise Star's spirit domain was completed, Little Master would definitely open her eyes and wake up. Who knew that things didn't go as they wished? Little Master didn't wake up and continued to sleep. It's all your fault. It must be that your tail was too heavy. Little Water Baby shouted angrily at Chochio. The little fat squirrel's furry face was full of embarrassment. Impossible. I control my strength well that day. It wouldn't hurt Master at all. Bah! That tail of yours can even split a mountain, let alone Master who is too weak to stand up to the wind. It must be that you didn't control your strength well and didn't control your strength well. Little Water Baby scolded angrily. Chochio immediately became listless. To tell the truth, even it began to wonder if it had used too much strength when it struck the back of Little Master's neck. After a few more days, Paradise Star's spirit domain had completely stabilized and returned to its previous tranquility. The spiritual energy inside the spiritual domain that Xiao Mu had depleted was also slowly recovering at a very slow pace. But Arbor still hadn't woken up. At this time, she was lying under the longevity tree with her eyes closed and her expression tranquil. Qi Shue and the other beasts were a little anxious. Almost half a month had passed, but Little Master still hadn't woken up. But looking at her face, it was very calm, without the slightest trace of pain. His pulse and breathing seemed to be quite stable, as if he was really just asleep. Should we carry Master out to find a doctor? The Little Water Baby asked worriedly. What can those quacks do? Chishua said angrily. Who in Anka City has better medical skills than our young master? Then are we just going to let master sleep here? Chishua pondered for a moment and said, let's wait for 2 more days. If master still hasn't woken up, I'll take her out and let those quacks have a look. It was useless to show it to a quack doctor. The little beasts were all well aware of this. After Paradise Planet became a spirit domain, the earth veins here were filled with spirit energy, which was actually very comfortable. But looking at the unconscious state of their little master, none of the beasts felt comfortable. How's Chocho? Other than Holy Water and Holy Earth, who could see Chocho's condition from time to time, no one else could. After the profound spirit jade is absorbed, it will be very beneficial to it. Now, Chocho's tree trunk had grown slightly taller and looked much better than half a month ago. Hearing this, Chishue and the others nodded. Just like this, they waited for another 2 days in Arbor. Chapter 1797. Just as everyone was discussing how to have Chishua transform into his human form and carry Little Master out to find a medical clinic, Arbor suddenly opened his eyes without warning and stared straight up. As far as the eye could see, there were many colorful spherical flowers. After being soaked in spirit energy, the longevity tree's flowers of different colors became even more translucent. The little water child almost cried tears of joy. Master, Master, you're awake. Arbor scrambled to his feet and subconsciously looked down at his unharmed hands and feet. He muttered to himself with a puzzled expression, not dead. Pa, 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 of course you're not dead, Master. The little water child said while wiping his tears. But you've been unconscious for a full 16 days, Master. Arbor looked around and found that all the big and small creatures, from the giant ape to the little white snake, were sitting in a circle beside him. I made you all worry. Arbor grabbed the little water child. How's Little Ball? When she used her inner vision just now, she saw that Little Ball was still listless and listless. The current him was probably so weak that he didn't even have the ability to break branches into clones. Little Ball's main body had instantly grown and injured its foundation. If it wanted to recover, it would need a large amount of black spirit jade to nourish it. The amount of black spirit jade she had right now was far from enough. Don't worry, Master. Little Ball is already stabilized. As long as it's given some time, it will definitely be able to return to its usual lively self. Master, Little Ball is very useful. Not only can Little Ball's leaves increase one's profound energy perception, but can also strengthen the body and prolong the life of an ordinary person. Also, Little Ball will be able to bear fruit in the future. If Master eats the sacred fruit, your cultivation will increase by at least 2 levels. The little fellow's chattering voice seemed to ring in Arbor's ears again. For a moment, she felt her little nose sting and subconsciously bit her thin lips. How can I help it? Besides finding a large amount of black spirit jade to nourish the little tree, is there any other faster method? Arbor asked with a frown. Little Ball had once said that its main body supported the entire star field, and all the profound energy in the star field was closely related to it. And now, all the mystic energy in the star field had been converted into spiritual energy. Her advancement on Paradise Planet had consumed a large amount of spirit energy from the star field, causing Chocho's main body to consume a great deal of energy. He could only think of other ways to make up for it. Apart from the profound spirit jade, the pure spiritual energy formed between heaven and earth is the most helpful to Chocho. If Master can find a large spirit domain and refine it for Chocho to use, the large amount of spirit energy inside can help Chocho recover faster. All right. She remembered that Elder Sue of Sunlight Academy had once said that the winner of the 6 Prefectures Academy ranking tournament would obtain the right to enter Spirit Realm on Brinset Island. 3 spirit realms have been unearthed on Brinset Island so far. These were all supplements that Chocho urgently needed. Chow Moo's eyes narrowed, concealing a trace of determination. Master, other than the first 10 days when you were advancing to the spiritual realm, what have you been doing for the last 6 days? Why can't he wake up? Arbor turned to look at the little beasts. How about I take you to a place? The little beasts naturally nodded in unison. With a thought, Arbor brought all the little beasts to a vast ocean. Chapter 1798. Look, what do you think of this sea? It's too wide. The little water baby hanging on Arbor's arm couldn't help but dance and jump for joy. Master, Master, I like it here, I like it here. This place was full of rich water, spiritual power. For holy water, it was simply the best place to live. Go. Arbor gently shook her little arm, and the little water baby drew a parabola in the sky and happily jumped into the sea. Everyone saw that as soon as it entered the sea, it turned into a small ice ball and wandered back and forth on the surface of the sea, riding the wind and breaking the waves. It looked very comfortable. Master has been in a coma for so many days because a sea opened in the star field. Arbor nodded and then shook her head. That's not entirely the reason. After saying that, she stood on the beach and stared at the sea, a dark red light flashing in her eyes. In just a breath's time, a fat sea fish suddenly flew out of the sea and jumped in front of Arbor. She reached out and held it in her arms. The sea fish seemed to be a little dizzy. It fell into Arbor's arms and didn't struggle. It just opened its mouth and spat out a few bubbles. Maybe you won't understand if I experiment here. After all, this sea was also a newly opened planet in her Danteon star field. In theory, as long as she used her spiritual sense, as long as she saw something in the star field, she could use her spiritual power to transfer it to her hands. In order to let this group of ignorant beasts have a direct experience, Arbor simply pulled everyone out of Paradise Planet. As soon as they moved out, they saw the tree that Yu Hui was lying on before. Only half of it was left on the edge of the earth wall. Arbor glanced sideways at the beasts. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and a red light quickly slid through her eyes. Everyone saw that the half of the tree that was growing in the soil was suddenly rolled up by the roots and thrown over the earth wall with a loud crash. The group of little beasts stared at her with their mouths agape. They all saw very clearly that the little master didn't use the slightest bit of spiritual energy in his body at all. How'd he inexplicably move the tree in front of them from the ground? Arbor was still holding the fish in his two little hands. He turned to look at the beasts and said, I seem to have gained a special ability, psychokinesis. This kind of psychokinesis should belong to a kind of spiritual system, and it was closely related to spiritual sense. At the moment, he could only move half of the tree, which was about 100 meters away. She didn't need any spiritual power to assist her, nor did she use any physical strength. She probably only used a part of her spiritual sense. She hadn't completely grasped the essentials yet, so she still needed to think more about it. Everyone returned to the gate of the sea. The little white snake wriggled its little body excitedly. Master, if that's the case, then you've profited from a disaster. Arbor nodded. You can say that. After consuming the holy fruit, not only did it remove all the corpse poison, it also allowed her body to form an immunity. She had felt her own pulse. When she broke through the spirit realm and directly jumped to the level of a third-level spirit master, her body also officially entered the immortal realm from a half-step immortal bone. Most importantly, her body actually became immune to the corpse poison. In other words, she probably didn't need to be afraid of being bitten by corpse puppets anymore. Of course, she wasn't a masochist. It would be best if she didn't get hurt. Chapter 1799. Dinner was that chubby sea fish. Everyone barbecued it on the beach. After eating, they dug a hole for the fish bones and buried it. In any case, the star domain had the ability to purify everything. It would automatically purify any trash. Master Silver, you haven't given this sea a name yet. Chocho simply touched a sore spot. All the beasts couldn't help but have headaches when they thought of the weird name their little master gave them. This newly discovered planet is called Fish Orchid Planet, Arbor said indifferently. Then let's just call this sea the Orchid Sea, okay? Okay. All the beasts nodded in unison. They all felt that this name was much better than the previous string of unreliable ones. After dinner, Xiao Mu opened the sealing sphere and released the crimson firmament blue ship from within. To be honest, Arbor was still a little shocked when he saw what looked like a small boat model slide down the wall of the transparent ball and crash heavily on the beach. It instantly turned into a 3-story ship that braved the wind and waves. The 3-story ship sailed steadily on the sea. From time to time, 1 or 2 stupid fish would come out from the side of the ship and follow the ship. That old man really didn't lie to this child. This was indeed a treasure. When everyone boarded the ship, they discovered that not only was this 3-story ship very spacious, but the items on board were also extremely luxurious. The ship's porch, doors, and windows were all inlaid with all kinds of gemstones. There was practically everything one could think of, including food and drinks. Most importantly, there were even boatmen. Of course, they couldn't be humans. The boatmen were all nimble and agile mechanical puppets that were around level 8 or level 9 mystic cultivators. Naturally, they were not as agile as Big Treasure, but they had no problem doing these simple and ordinary jobs. Arbor originally wanted to sail around the sea to see how far it was. However, halfway through the voyage, he realized that there was no end in sight, so he gave up on the idea of continuing to play. Didn't I tell you guys? Is the time on Fish Orchid Planet different from the outside world? Arbor suddenly asked. All the beasts shook their heads. I've calculated that staying on Fish Orchid Planet for a day is only about 2 hours in the outside world. Therefore, if you want to cultivate in seclusion, stay on the Fish Orchid Planet. You should be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Arbor did not wait for the surprised beasts to express their opinions. She waved her hand and left the star field in a flash. She returned to the place where she had moved half of the deadwood. She glanced around coldly. Seeing that there were no abnormalities, she walked out of the earth wall. At this moment, a faint sigh of relief suddenly came from behind the dead tree that was lying on the ground. A person sneakily poked his head out from behind a tree. Seeing that there was no one in front of him, he hurriedly patted his chest, took a deep breath, and turned around. Then, his body suddenly stiffened. The man's eyes widened as he looked at Arbor in disbelief. He didn't know when Arbor had appeared behind him and was looking at him expressionlessly. Why you? Before the man could finish his sentence, he felt a cold, sharp claw gripping his throat. Who sent you to guard this place? I don't know what you're talking about. The man panicked and couldn't control himself. He hastily tried to defend himself. I was just passing by. I was just passing by. Passing by, Arbor sneered and tightened her grip on the man's neck. Chapter 1800. This place is so desolate, and there are no villages or shops around. You said you were just passing by? Arbor sneered inwardly and tightened her grip on the man's neck. Who sent you? It's Brother Doggy. For some reason, the man felt that he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat in the hands of such an innocent and beautiful little girl. His intuition told him that if he didn't confess, he would probably die a horrible death. Who's Brother Doggy? Arbor tightened her grip on the man's neck. Tell me. Brother Doggy cough, cough, cough. I don't know. I only know that Brother Doggy is a big shot from the Divine Land. Our Yu family can't afford to offend him. You're a disciple of the Yu family. Arbor looked at him coldly and said. The Yu family disciple felt a chill run down his spine, and he couldn't help but shiver when he heard such cold and heartless words. I'm a disciple of the Yu family. He braced himself and said. What did you see just now? Arbor asked calmly. The Yu family disciple's eyes flashed, and then he shook his head with difficulty. What did I see? I didn't see anything. You weren't surprised at all when you saw me appear out of thin air. If he wasn't pretending, then he really didn't see anything. However, would Arbor really think that he didn't see anything? Then there was only one possibility. He was pretending. Was he pretending that he didn't see anything and wanted to rush back to inform the Yu family? A mocking sneer slid across Xiao Mu's lips, and she lightly exhaled a burst of energy from her small hand. Then she heard a light crack, and the next second, that Yu clan disciple's head drooped to the side. Xiao Mu tossed him to the ground in passing before walking out of the alley. The moment he stepped out of the alley, the nearby residents only heard a loud boom. Everyone hurriedly ran out of their houses and looked into the depths of the alley, but there was no one there. They could only see flames soaring into the sky behind the alley, and they couldn't see anything clearly. After Arbor got out of the alley, she ran toward the gate of the Yu family's mansion in Anka City. The Yu clan had gone too far and almost forced her into a desperate situation. If Sapling hadn't sacrificed himself and turned the situation around to save her, what would have happened to her? Mutated corpse puppet? A monster that was neither human nor ghost? When she thought of the torment and fright she had suffered before this, she wanted to grab the Yu family's patriarch and beat him to death. A moment later, Arbor arrived at the Yu family's door. However, before he could kick the door open, he heard Qi Xianxian and the others exclaim one after another. Jojo! Jojo! When Xiao Mu turned around to look, she saw Qi Xianxian and the little fatty sprinting towards her. Qi Xianxian reached out and hugged her. Angrily and anxiously, she patted her twice. Where'd you run off to? Don't you know that everyone is worried about you? It had already been half a month, and everyone had already turned the entire Wonka city upside down to search for Xiao Mu's figure. However, during this period of time, not even a single hair on Jojo's head could be found, let alone Arbor. As time passed, the uneasy feeling in their hearts began to spread, causing everyone to feel uneasy and unable to eat or sleep. Although Arbor's trip was very dangerous, it was a fruitful one. She held Qi Xianxian's little hand. I'm really fine that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.